Good evening. Hello. It's wonderful to see you all tonight. Thank you for joining us. At this time for our invocation, I'd like to invite Pastor Shannon Scott from Grace Baptist Church to the lectern. Thank you. So before you all sit down, if you wouldn't mind joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. Okay. So at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the City Council are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver it to the City Clerk staff prior to the item being heard by the City Council. Please observe a 3-minute time limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, please state your name and city residence for the record. We have one revision to the record, or to the agenda. Item 18, the exhibit was updated to remove erroneous information. It's a great word, erroneous. Okay, so tonight we have some proclamations, recognitions, and presentations. Do we have the? Oh, thank you. So I would like to invite Shazia Miraj to the podium to receive the proclamation for American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month. Okay, so August is American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month, and we have a wonderful community of Muslim Americans here in Corona, and I reached out to the Islamic Society of Corona, NORCO, and I asked if they would send someone that would receive this recognition, and if they would say a few words about their culture and anything else that you wanted to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, esteemed City Council members, distinguished guests, and fellow residents. Today, we gather here to commemorate and celebrate the rich culture tapestry that makes our city so diverse and vibrant. It is with great honor and respect that we come together to proclaim the month of August as American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month in our city. This proclamation recognizes the significant contributions of the Muslim community to our society, their history, and their ongoing presence that enriches our shared experience. This Muslim community continues to contribute to our cultural fabric in meaningful ways through their tradition, art, cuisine, and values. Muslims add to the diversity that forms the heart of our city's identity. American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month serves as a reminder of the shared values that unite as a community, values of compassion, tolerance, and respect for one another. By proclaiming August as American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month, we celebrate the beauty of diversity that is the cornerstone of our city. This proclamation symbolizes our commitment to creating an inclusive environment where people from all walks of life can thrive and express their identities freely. I encourage all residents to engage with the events and activities organized by the ISCN community. Let us embrace this occasion to foster dialogue, bridge cultural gaps, and strengthen the bonds that unite us as a neighbor and fellow citizens. Let this proclamation stand as a testament to our city's dedication to diversity, unity, and mutual respect. By recognizing the month of August as American Muslim Appreciation and Awareness Month, we reaffirm our commitment to an inclusive future where everyone's contributions are acknowledged and celebrated. We are humbled and thankful to the mayor and the council members for inspiring us with this appreciation and their great service to the city of Corona. We also want to thank all city officials, especially our heroes, police, and the fire department for keeping us safe. Thank you again. God bless America.
Can we take a picture real quick? Thank you. Okay, moving on to a recognition. National History Day competition winner, Ava George. I would like to invite Ava George to the podium to receive the recognition. Ava, why don't you tell the audience here a little bit about your accomplishment here?
Hi, my name is Ava. For National History Day, I put together a project, a 10-minute performance about the first female CIA agent, Virginia Hall. Virginia Hall was an amazing woman. She had a disability, but nevertheless, she defied gender norms and became the first female CIA agent and a trailblazer.
Wow. Very accomplished. Congratulations on your second place finish. And what school are you at here?
I'm at Centennial High School.
And what grade?
I'm a freshman.
Freshman. Look out, Centennial. You got a superstar in your hands. Can we take a picture really quick? Thank you. She's for sure going to give you two historians a run for your money. Okay, and last we have the Corona Elks are going to be presenting a check to Vet Connect. So I'd like to invite Amalia Neves, Jesse Vargas, Ron Anderson, Sophia Betancourt, and Brad Area to the podium. It looks like and some other people that they found. Yeah. Is that guy in the back, is he bothering you? Is he with you guys? So, and Vet Connect as well? Are you speaking?
Yes. All right, thank you. Hi, good to see you. Oh, you take a picture? Okay. On behalf of Corona Elks Lodge 2045, we'd like to present this donation to Corona Vets, the Vet Connects at the library. They do a fantastic job for our veterans at the library. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I have a little something prepared for those of you that may be new to Vets Connect. So the Vets Connect at the Library Service, the main goal is to help connect local veterans and their families to their full benefit potential. And so we have a very caring team of volunteers who really strive to make sure that veterans have access to, but also guidance when checking out employment, buying a home, and accessing all of their health benefits, which includes the latest PACT Act. And so that's been keeping them very busy over the past year. We also do regular office hours hosted at the library, Tuesday and Wednesday mornings. We have our Vet Connect book club that meets on the first and third Wednesday of each month. And we're excited to bring the now annual Veteran Resource Fair to the library in October. So really, our main goal here is just to help veterans understand that not only are they part of the community, but also that the community is there for them. So thank you.
Yeah, don't try and cash the big one. The banks don't like that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No problem, guys. Thank you. Oh, a little photo really quick. Vet Connect is one of those local organizations that does so much. So what a worthy cause, and thank you to the Elks for the donation. I'm sure that you guys will find a good way to put that money to use. Lastly, we have a presentation from Waste Management on an agreement update. So I'd like to invite David Davis of MSW Consultants to the podium to provide the presentation.
Good evening, Council. I'm David Davis with MSW Consultants, and the purpose of our study session tonight is to inform you about the solid waste franchise agreement that the city has negotiated with Waste Management, and to tell you what happens next. And to do that, I want to talk a little bit about the background to kind of refresh our memory about what's taken place so far. This will be the third time that I've provided an update to the council on the agreement with Waste Management. So I'm going to talk about the previous study sessions that we've done, and then I'm going to talk about the agreement. And in the agreement, I'm going to talk about the services, the key contract terms, and the rates that are going to be in the agreement. And then after that, we're going to talk about what happens next. So you may recall we had a study session in February of 2022, and at that session we talked about some industry trends. We talked about the solid waste market in Riverside County. We talked about the pros and cons of going out to bid. We said, should we go out to bid or can we negotiate? What are the pros and cons of those two courses of action? We talked about the two proposals that WM, or Waste Management, had offered to the city. One was a short term where they were going to include all their costs in the remaining term of the agreement, and it would have resulted in an increase of $5 per home per month for residents, in addition to the normal CPI. Their other proposal was that they would extend the current term of their agreement from they're going to add 10 years to it. So it expires now in 2026, and they were going to extend it out to 2036. And under those conditions, they would only increase over and above the CPI an additional 60 cents on the residential and not increase the residential. Not increase the commercial. We also talked about how those rates fit into the rates for comparable services in Riverside County. And you may recall some charts that we showed that the rates in Corona were generally towards the low end of the scale. And I've got some rates that I can show you that are similar, and they're based on the rates that are proposed in the new agreement. So based on that discussion about the market in Riverside County, the pros and cons of going out to bid, and the conclusion is that if the city were to go out to bid, it really wouldn't come up likely with much of a different rate than what it had, because its rates were already low compared to the rest of the market. So staff was directed to continue negotiating with WM. And we came back to council in August to get some feedback on some issues. Specifically, we wanted to know about billing, about revenue sharing with waste management as far as recyclable materials, the revenue from the sales of the recyclable materials, and also household hazardous waste collection. WM has offered to take over the billing at no additional cost. And the reason why they want to do this is they feel that by having a more direct communication line between the customers and themselves, they might be able to reduce contamination and thereby save money. So they're willing to take over the billing at no additional cost. So we talked about that, and council directed us to go ahead and let Waste Management take over the billing. We also talked about other cities in Orange County that had revenue sharing agreements with the sale of recyclables. And the issue was whether we wanted to require WM to share some of the revenue that they get from the sale of recyclables with the city. And if that were to occur, then they would have to increase that 60 cents that they were offering to the city, because that offset of their costs that they use the revenue for is already baked into their current rates. So we decided to just keep the revenue sharing arrangement the way that it was. We also talked about alternatives for household hazardous waste collection. You're probably aware that Riverside County has 3 permanent facilities in Moreno Valley and Murrieta and Beaumont, so none of which are in Corona. They do have a temporary rotating household hazardous waste collection event, but we talked about, well, should we have WM do a collection event and include that in the agreement? Or another option was to do something called At Your Door, which is really a deluxe program where they would come to your door and pick up household hazardous waste. So we decided to keep it the way that it was. And one of the reasons why is because if you wanted to do, have WM do a household hazardous waste collection event, it would be $50,000 an event. It would add about 25 cents to the rate. But you can always add that at a later time. So of the 3 things that we talked about at that meeting, the thing that really is going to change is the billing, where WM is going to take over the billing. And then for today, we're going to just talk about the current agreement. We're going to go into just a little bit of recap on the regulations and industry trends that are driving a lot of the changes to the agreement. And then we're going to talk about the services that are in an agreement, the key terms, and the customer rates. So the point here is that solid waste in California is a really highly regulated enterprise. And the history of this is that we've always had to recycle from AB 939. That started in 1989, and that's why you have 3 carts out in front of your house. The state required businesses to recycle. In AB 341 requires them to recycle their dry recyclables, and AB 1826 required them to recycle their organics, but there were no teeth. Nobody from Sacramento was going to fly down and write you a ticket if you didn't recycle. That's changing with SB 1383. It's the most significant change in solid waste regulation in 30 years. And the important impacts that I think are going to impact most people is, one, they're going to be able to put food waste in with their green waste container, and that's a big driver of the cost because it changes the recipe of the composting and it makes it more expensive, and you have to go to a specifically permitted facility to process that material. The other thing that it's going to do is it's going to require cities to enforce recycling. So the days of cajoling people into recycling are over. Everybody, all commercial and multifamily businesses are going to be required to recycle, and the city is going to be required by the state to enforce that. So if people decide that they do not want to recycle, the city is obligated to issue those people notices of violation and fine those people. So this is a statewide thing, and it's not something that the city of Corona is doing. It's just something that the state of California is forcing all local jurisdictions to do. So this is also creating a lot of work for cities and haulers, because there's a lot of contamination monitoring that has to happen, because as people get new containers, there's going to be a lot more contamination. and there has to be a lot more record keeping and reporting, and local jurisdictions are required to purchase organic content materials. So, and there's also a lot of costs that are being incurred as a result of having to build the facilities that are going to process this new material that's being collected. So all these regulations are creating upward pressure on solid waste rates. And the other thing that's happening is there's these industry trends. China stopped accepting recyclable materials a few years ago, and we're still feeling the effects of that. There's a driver shortage where most of the drivers that you see in the industry are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and as they age out, for some reason, it's just a cultural thing where there's just not enough 25-year-olds that are willing to drive a truck. So that, and then also supply chain shortages and things like that are also, in addition to these regulations, creating upward pressure on rates. So your current agreement was negotiated in 2006 for 15 years, and then it had a provision in there that in 2016 it was going to start extending by 1 year. So it will always have a 5-year evergreen term, and that was ended in 2021. So now the term ends on in November of 2026. So the proposed services that are in the agreement that we've negotiated with Waste Management, there's 3 slides here. One talks about the current services, another one talks about the services that are related to SB 1383, and the third one talks about some enhanced services. So the basic idea here is that you're going to continue to have the 3-cart residential collection system, the on-call bulky waste, commercial and multifamily customers are going to have bin service. They're going to be able to recycle their organics and their recyclables. You're going to have the permanent roll-off. The company's going to continue to be required to provide service to city facilities at no charge and also provide service at city-sponsored special events. The services that are added, these are the services that you're going to need in order to comply with the state law. So you may recall that WM is now processing the organic material that's collected at curbside at a facility that is permitted to accept food waste and green waste. And they've guaranteed that capacity over the term of the agreement. They've also agreed to do targeted education and outreach. There's also a contamination minimization function that they're required to do. And you may recall that they're going to use a camera system to, basically look at all the material that's put in the hopper and communicate with customers if they contaminate their material. They're also required to do a compliance review once a year and also assist with waiver management. The enhanced services include a bulky item collection for multifamily customers, which there was not a multifamily bulky item system before, and now the tenants are going to be able to call and request a bulky item pickup. And then the previous agreement had one special cleanup event where the company would provide 4 roll-off boxes once a year. Now they're going to provide those 4 roll-off boxes twice a year. And then they're also going to do a mulch and compost giveaway 3 times a year. They're going to provide your residents with two 40-yard roll-off boxes of compost. And then also they're going to, at no charge, they're going to assume responsibility for residential billing. As far as the key contract terms, the term would be extended to 2036. The franchise fees would stay the same, 11% for residential, 15% for commercial. The 50-cent amount that the city had retained before is going to continue to go to the city. And then in addition to that, the company is going to provide annual funding for city beautification of $200,000 per year. There are also going to be annual rate adjustments, which you have now. It's going to be limited to a blend of inflation and actual disposal costs. It's going to be based on the CPI. Something that's different in this one is the city now has the ultimate control of the material. So Waste Management is deciding where to take it, but if the city ever, during the term of the agreement, if the city decides, hey, we think we'd like to have our material go to a different facility, the city has that right. And the other thing is that there are performance audits in the agreement where every 3 years, the city could hire an outside firm to do a formal performance audit of waste management, where they would look at their the billing accuracy, the franchise fee, the tonnage reporting, look at their safety record, look at their customer service, and the city would be reimbursed for that cost up to $50,000, and Waste Management would pay that. So they would be essentially paying the city to have somebody do an audit of their performance under the agreement. There's also liquidated damages. So if there's areas or events where Waste Management falls short, so like a missed pickup or a missed report, or if they fall short in other areas where they're falling short, but it's not enough to necessarily, default the agreement, there's these middle ground things where there are prescribed damages for specific failures that are in the agreement. And then it also includes a dedicated waste management staff dedicated solely to the city of Corona for education and outreach activities. So lastly, to talk about customer rates, what this chart shows is the history of some of the most common residential rates, and I'll show a similar slide for commercial in a minute. But what this shows, most of your residents are going to pay that rate at the top. And so, for example, in the dates there is like when those rates became effective. So in July of 2019, the rate became effective of $24.50. And in October of 22 are the rates that are in place today. So currently, your residential ratepayers are paying $26.67, and this is a monthly rate. So if they get billed every 2 months, the amount may look a little bit different on their bill. And then what WM is proposing, that's what's been negotiated, is the $28.78. So that is a $2.11 increase over the current rate. And I'll show you a breakdown of that in a minute. But these other rates are there's an income qualified, and then if people need an extra cart, for example, the current rate for an extra cart is $7.85 a month, and that's going to go to $8.33. And this is a similar slide for the, this is a detail that breaks down that change from the 2667. So if you see on the top row there, October 22, it's 2667, it's going to go to 2878. This is all the math that's involved. The rates are broken down into components, and each of those components are adjusted based on a different factor. So the service and the billing are adjusted based on inflation, and the disposal and the organics are adjusted based on the change in the tipping fees for those services. And then the 60 cents is a one-time adjustment that's going to occur now, and it's not going to occur in the future. So those things all together are going to make the rates increase initially about almost 8% on the residential sector. On the commercial sector, there is no corollary 60 cents. The rates are just being adjusted based on the current inflation and disposal adjustment method in your current contract. So probably these are just rates for very common levels of commercial service organized by the history. So you can see in December of 2020, the rates went up 2.4%, 3.4, 4.5. And with this new agreement, the current rates are going to go up about 5.5%. So a really common level of service is on the row 2 there, the 3-yard bin once a week. It's going to go from $154.76 to $163.24. And I'm highlighting that in bold because I'm going to show you that in a minute in comparison to other rates for the same level of service in Western Riverside County. So what this chart shows is the residential rate. And what it shows is Corona is the slide that's third from the bottom there. And the way this is organized is we've itemized the city fees and the part of the rate that the hauler retains. So these are organized according to the dark part of the stacked bar in each of these. So what this shows is that the rates that the city's negotiated with WM for this new agreement, out of the gate, it's going to be the third lowest in residential in western Riverside County. And this is a similar chart that shows the commercial rates. And you can see that Corona is the 1, 2, 3, 4, like the fifth from the bottom there. So sometimes you'll see cities where the residential rate's very competitive, but the commercial rate's really high, and it kind of offsets. But in this agreement, we've negotiated a very low residential rate and a very competitive commercial rate. So that just summarizes the proposed agreement. Talked about the services, the key terms, and the rates. So now I just want to talk about what happens next. According to the state constitution, in order to adjust solid waste rates, the city has to go through a Prop 218 process called a majority protest. And what needs to happen is a 45-day notice goes out, and then after that notice goes out, there's a public hearing where people are allowed to come and provide their input on the adjusted rates, and then during the 45-day period, they're allowed to file protests. And if more than 50% of the people that receive the notice file a protest, then the rates don't go forward. But if fewer than 50% submit protests, then it goes to a vote of the elected body. And then if the elected body approves the rates, then the rates go into effect. So we're expecting that the Prop 218 notice will go out in the next week or so, and that the public hearing would be scheduled for probably the second meeting in October or maybe the first meeting in November. And then once those rates are approved and the agreement's approved, the new rates and the new contract would go into effect January 1st. So that's the update on the solid waste agreement that the city has negotiated with Waste Management. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Ellis, really quick, are we allowed to ask questions in this presentation? I mean, this is just
Yeah,
a
you bet.
presentation.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
ask questions.
Councilmember Speak.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Davis. This is, I know we, put this in your hands and the staff's hands several months back, and we gave you a pretty long list of things we wanted to make sure that were wedged in here. At the same time, really mindful of, the rates, and we all knew they were going to go up. They've gone up for everybody that we've seen, and I'm really happy to see this. This hits all the items that I was looking for and then some. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you to Waste Management for their hard work and coming and bringing us all to the table and moving us forward. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Speak.
Let me go again? I'll go again if you want. Come up with some more
It
questions.
was the
Wes.
tweed jacket,
I'll
I'm
defer to
sorry. I'm
Wes.
sorry.
Nothing from me, Mayor.
Councilmember Casillas.
Good job. Thank you for the presentation. I want to highlight for everyone that we are now going to have Holloway for multi-family units. That's a big deal. So people in condos and apartments will be able to get that, and that was a much-needed service. And then you said that folks will be able to get mulch. How will they know about that? Will it come in there?
Well, there's a very robust public education and outreach requirements in the agreement. And as part of that, they're going to inform all your residents about these special services. So they're going to be informed about the mulch. They're going to be informed about the citywide cleanups. So they're going to be informed about all these services. So the city has oversight approval of the outreach and education. So before they send something out, they have to clear it with the city. And if something is not included, the city is going to let them know.
Awesome. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. I just had a couple of questions. On page 15 of your slide,
Yes.
you talked about that the city has the right to audit. I missed how many times they could do that in this 10-year agreement,
Every third year.
every third year. And then, are we allowed to pick the auditor? The city is?
Yes.
Okay. And they'll pay the first $50,000 if we want it?
Yes.
Okay. And then regarding the Prop 18, how does the notice, how does it go out? Does it go out in the bill?
It goes out in the mail. There's a special mailer. So it'll be a separate piece of mail that everybody receives.
Okay. And you guys know how many you'll send out. And then if I remember correctly, you said 50% of them, if 50% of them disagree with the rates,
Yeah.
then it doesn't move forward.
Correct. So the notice gives people, it lets them know, it says, hey, if you don't like this, you have to protest. You can do it by email, by letter, or you can show up at the public hearing.
Okay, and then the last question, the team that is dedicated to the outreach for Corona, do they talk about what their method of outreach is?
Yes, in the agreement, a lot of it is electronic, a lot of it's print, a lot of it's social media. So all those different media are kind of called out in the public outreach plan in the agreement.
Okay, and then Mr. Ellis, since the city has oversight on what they put out, we'll be able to use our social media as well to attach some of that messaging?
If we wanted to, we could.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public for the proclamation, recognition, and/or presentations?
Mayor, yes, we have 4 speaker cards for agenda item number 2, and we have 1 speaker card for agenda item number 5.
Okay, come on down. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Don Fuller. I'm a resident here. Hope you're having a good evening. I'm wondering why that presentation was in this part of the agenda. Seemed like it should have been someplace else in the agenda. At any rate, what I really wanted to do was just to put in a few words of thanks and appreciation for the local Muslim community. I'm glad they got a recognition tonight. A lot of them have left and gone home. But I find them to be the very definition of what is meant by good citizens. Regardless of who you are, they have helped with their various food drives. I'm not a member of their congregation, and I think there's very little chance I ever will be. But they have reached out to me and invited me to their Ramadan dinners. I think I probably got that invitation by mistake, but I went anyway. And they have an open house later on in the summertime and the early fall, which they allow me in. So that says something about them. So I just want to put in a word. I think they're the best of citizens. They represent the best that people can be for the community. And I'm glad they got a recognition tonight. And that's all I wanted to say. I'm just glad they're here in town. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I don't know what I can say after that. You know, that's a goodwill. That's wonderful. I really want to, you saw the hall full earlier. So we sent the message out that this is happening. Everybody wanted to show up. I mean, we actually had to tell people, no, the hall's going to get too much. So, but I really, really want to, from the community, want to appreciate and thank the council for the recognizing August and proclamation of recognition of August as the Muslim Heritage Month. Just want to say a couple of words about the Muslims in this city or in the state or in this country. I am myself a resident of Corona since '91. I have had several opportunities to move, but I refused because I love it here. And most of the people, Muslims who have moved here, love it here. Some of them have moved here because of the mosque that we have built, and a lot of people bought homes in this neighborhood. So that's why you see that, our mosque is, we have a lot of people attending the services. But I really want to say that the Muslims are everywhere. You can see them in the medical field, in construction, and, in all areas of professions. It is recognized the Muslims are of all the minority segments in this country tend to be very professional oriented and very successful and have their own businesses. So for me to stand here and count all the achievements of the Muslims, I think would be whimsical. But I really want to say thank you, and we will continue doing what we're doing, the best we can do to be the good citizens and good neighbors. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, all the City Council members. My name is Athar Saeed. I'm the current president of Islamic Society of Corona Narco, and we wanted to thank you for making this month as a Muslim Appreciation Month. I think Sister Shazia had eloquently described it, and we as a community, we want to thank you, and also we want to thank the city officials and the city police department and the fire department. And as I was walking with Captain Young, and he was describing the weather, and in this time of the year, they are pretty busy and pretty active. May God give them the strength and protect all of us. And also, I attended last week Mayor State of Union. I'm more excited and more energetic now to engage my community. Thank you all. Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, the Honorable Mayor, my City Council members.
I was saying, listen,
friends.
we laugh when you say that too. It's okay.
Nobody laughs louder than me.
I'm like, we're still getting used to it.
Me too.
My City Council members, friends, staff, and residents of Corona, thank you so much for recognizing Muslims, not this month, but having us present in our community, recognizing this recognition means a lot to us. And for me, I'm here not only as a Muslim, but as an elected member from Western Municipal Water District, the first Muslim elected. It's an honor to be here. To be standing here and telling the city, thank you. Thank you for recognizing. Thank you for appreciating our efforts. And I look forward to a continued partnership with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Joe Morgan, 206 Grand. I want to second what Mr. Fuller said. The ISCN, they're an exemplary example of what it means to be good citizens. They're always here when somebody needs them. They're always open arms. Everybody's always welcome at the mosque. On to the less cheery news about it. With the waste management presentation, it made it sound like everything's just, oh, look at the great deal that we have with, that we're pursuing with waste management. While I definitely agree the multifamily housing bulk pickups is huge, I can't tell you how many C-click fixes I've done over near Promenade Park for refrigerators and couches and stuff, because it's quite a burden if you're living in an apartment or a townhome, to try to get rid of something like that. I don't know how you go about getting rid of it without hiring a company to come get that kind of stuff. So that's huge. But the not so cheery part of the whole thing is that the last council, so the presenter sort of just threw out this thing about inflation and CPI and all this kind of stuff. I can't believe that people that are in charge of doing this kind of work and consulting and everything apparently don't understand how CPI works. There is no CPI unless you just combine everything, throw it all together. The previous council, conveniently before they left, jumped waste management away from the waste management or waste hauling CPI index. The CPI is made up of hundreds of thousands of different individual classifications. They generously jumped them from the waste hauling index to some sort of recycling, manufacturing, some other higher tech thing than what they do. They're not recycling stuff in the recycle bin. They're not picking out stuff. Our cardboard's not getting separated out. You can go up there and see what's going on. They're just dumping it all in there. Yet our rates are now in perpetuity going to increase at twice the rate of inflation. It happens every year. It went from an index that had a nominal average increase of like 2.6, 2.7 to it was like almost 6%. The index at the time. So while historically the index that they were on previously increased about the rate of inflation, which is what you would expect. They jumped them to one that's double. So when they say they're not going to increase, there's a built-in double the rate of inflation increase in it. So you can't just say, well, it's going to increase by the rate of inflation, because that's not true. It's on a different trajectory, and it increases. You know, you can see this is 8%, so that's roughly double the current rate of inflation, and it's going to keep going up every year, every year, every year. So while we were the lowest previously, we're not going to be the lowest for very long at that type of escalation rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I remember right, they actually did change the CPI for this contract. So we did get away from that CPI into the one that we're supposed to be in the entire time. That was one of the stipulations that we put forward to the consultant. Mr. Ellis, can you confirm that that's what we did?
Yes, we did go away from the previous CPI index to the all urban consumers, which is the lower. It has a lower inflation rate than what you'd see with the other.
Thank you. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
I'm Maddie Paxton, and I am District 1, and I just want to back on to what Don Fuller had to say and add my 2 cents. The Muslim community, the history of it, when I came into the city, wasn't so good. And they have just shown what amazing people they are and what kind hearts and spirits. And I don't want to forget that during the awful time of COVID, they were our testing station. And they were the ones that came up with the food drives. And even after that, COVID is over and we're having different economic issues, they are continuing to do so. So I just want to, again, add on how wonderful they've been and what an important segment of Corona they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, are there any more speaker cards?
Mayor, we do not have any more speaker cards.
Okay, moving on to the meeting minutes. City Council meeting of August 2nd, 2023. Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public for the meeting minutes?
Mayor, we do not have any speaker cards for the meeting minutes.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, that item passes. Moving on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine matters, status reports, or documents covering previous city council action. The items listed on the consent calendar may be enacted in one motion with the concurrence of the city council. A council member or any person in attendance may request that an item be removed for further consideration. Would my colleagues like to poll any items for discussion?
Mr. I don't need to pull anything, but however, I do need to abstain from item number 9, as one of the awardees is Albert A. Webb and Associates, and they're one of my clients. And though I technically don't have to, I just think it would be prudent not to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Steiner? Okay. I don't have any to pull either. Ms. Edwards, I think that we're going to, Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, yes, I have one speaker card for agenda item 14.
Okay. Okay, so with Councilmember Speak abstaining from item number 9, we're going to vote on all of the items. How does he abstain from just that one?
They just make a note.
Yes, we'll make sure to note the meeting minutes that he abstained from that item.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the balance.
I'll second.
All right. Please vote. Okay, those items pass. And Ms. Edwards, the speaker card for item number 14.
Yes, Mayor. I have Mike Shea for agenda item 14.
Going once. Oh, there we go.
Been a while, yeah. Yeah, my name is Michael Shea. I live in the impacted area. I was hoping we'd have a little bit of discussion about it, but I support the motion to as it is my understanding to essentially extend the Skyline Village project. Again, I support it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Unless somebody already did, it looks like. I'll second
Push
it.
the button for the motion.
Good job, Tom.
I'll second.
I'm a victim of my own success. Okay, item 14 passes. Did you abstain from that vote? Okay.
Can explain why really quick, even though, again, another gray area. This is Mr. Bowen's project. We were previously involved in a project they were not involved with anymore. The time frame is within a year. Therefore, I will be abstaining.
Thank you. Item passes 4-1, or 4-0, nothing, anyway. Moving on to communications from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment on items within the council's jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note that state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute time limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, please state your name and city of residence for the record. Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, yes, we have 3 speaker cards for communication from the public.
Okay, come on down.
Hello, I'm Mike Carson from Corona, and also the president of the local Lions Club. And I wanted to thank the council for its many years of support, the decades that you guys have, and you and previous members have given us is really appreciated. And also the support that the current council has given us on our 100th year anniversary, which is September 7th. I wanted to say thank you. And I also wanted to mention to the general public that we have our meetings on the first and third Thursday at Honey's Restaurant from noon to 1 p.m. And all visitors are welcome. So hopefully some of you can join us at some time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, before you leave, do you have still tickets available for your anniversary?
Yes. Yeah, they're $75 each.
And they're available where?
Just give me a call.
Okay.
And I'll fill you in.
If the general public that's watching wanted to
I know where to go contact you. I'm saying other folks may want to know.
How would somebody else, if somebody else is watching, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, actually, we sent out a limited number of invitations because we only have a limited number of seating available at the Hidden Valley Golf Course.
Okay.
So
Just
we've
checking.
already sent out to 150 so, and we're waiting for RSVPs, and then we could kind of open it up.
Okay.
So
Just checking.
Fantastic.
thank you.
sir.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Nope. All right. Cool.
Good evening again.
Good evening again. I just want to talk about something that was a very positive thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. At the Corona Norco Unified School District Board meeting, they voted on a resolution for equality for all members of the LGBTQ community who were both students and staff. It was a unanimous vote, which surprised me somewhat, but take that. There were about 4 local members of Corona who showed up to speak about it. I was one of them. And so we got in our message, and the vote came through positive. And the matter was covered in last Monday's issue of the Press Enterprise, front page story. Said district supports LGBTQ plus rights, and the story quotes me fairly extensively and accurately, which is a good thing. It's always good to be quoted accurately. And therefore, the district has so far avoided the chaos that is occurring in other school districts in the area, in Murrieta Valley, in Temecula, in Chino Valley. Those school districts have been having chaos and messes and ugly, noisy, loud board meetings over exactly this same issue. And at the risk of alienating some people, I'm going to tell you what the common thread of all that chaos is. The common thread is when the churches start getting involved in the school boards. need to keep the churches out of the school boards, need to keep the churches out of government. And a fundamental definition, as I see it, a definition of governing is that it is the art of compromise. But religion has no place for compromise. And you're getting people into the school boards who think they have a divine right to tell other people how to live their lives, and it's turning into chaos. In Temecula, they're trying to overturn that school board that got elected. In Murrieta Valley, they're having trouble with that. In Chino Valley, they're having same kinds of problems. Thankfully, we have avoided that so far in Corona-Norco Unified School District. It's my sound contention, as several people who know me will verify, keep religion out of the school boards and keep religion out of government. And if religion tries to get itself into the Corona-Norco Unified School District, they will bump into me. Now, they might not think I'm a very big bump, but I can be a loud and determined bump. So I'm glad that the school district, local, passed that resolution a couple weeks ago. I'm glad to hear it. I'm all for it. And I'm all for it. So I'm moving forward and avoiding chaos in our own local school board. Thank you very much for your time. Everybody have a good evening and get home safe.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Michael Kersey, a longtime resident of Corona since 1993. My comments are primarily directed tonight to the audience members, but this is not meant as to be disrespectful to any of you, including the city treasurer or the fire chief if they happen to be here, as each of you and them will receive a copy of my in-depth concern with fire and city fire department compensation. I'll be providing an additional copy at the first council meeting in September if anyone's interested. My question is this: anyone here make $500,000 last year? How about $450,000? Do I hear 350? Do I hear 250,000 or even 150? Will you settle for 100? Who's on salary here? Anyone on an hourly rate with a promise of overtime? I'll bet not salary and overtime. But we have a Corona fire captain who made $510,307 in 2022 for what is essentially a blue-collar job, salary and overtime. How do you get both? This policy is across the board. Never mind the benefit package as well as the 20 and out option. What we're doing is we're paying Rolex money for a Timex job. This sum is more than the president, the California governor, or the Kaiser cardiologist, neurosurgeon, primary care, or Kaiser emergency doctor earns. By the way, the average salary for a general medicine doctor is $153,000 through Kaiser. Once upon a time, civil service work was on the lower pay scale, but it offered stability and a reasonable pension. Now, Corona civil service pay exceeds for-profit companies, and they can pack pensions and never worry about job cuts or layoffs. Will you even get a pension? Hello, 401k, because you're fully funding it. The current system, as I see it, is unreasonable, unaffordable, and unsustainable, and it permeates the entire city's mentality. But Corona provides this access. Well, no, not actually true. Everyone in this audience funds it. The blue-collar fire service responds to a variety of incidents, but the volume are routine in nature, and the internal mantra is quite simple. Put the red on the blue. It's not a rocket science job. Each time you see an ambulance with a fire department vehicle standing by, for the most part, you didn't hear the fire bell. What you do is it's a bell and it's going ka-ching, ka-ching. Overtime is pouring in. Now, you'll hear justifications for salary and overtime, but it's cheaper than hiring anyone. Really? Ronald Reagan once said that government spends money like a drunken sailor, but then he apologized and said, sailors at least earn their own money. Corona has no money. It exists on what it takes place, and it takes from us. We pay the price. By the way, I was hoping the fire chief would be here because I'd like to know, does the fire captain live in Corona, or is it Corona Del Mar? Will there be a comprehensive list of total compensation rates to include the cost of benefits? What do you think? The answer is no, but we need radical change because it cannot continue it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Morgan, 2063 Rand. So I asked the consultant guy, hey, so did you really take it off of an individual index and put it to the composite index? And he said he couldn't tell me. So I just asked him, can you confirm what happened, what the council and the city manager said? Oh yeah, you're gonna have to go to the city to get that information. That doesn't exactly exude integrity, that you can't answer a simple question. That right there is the all urban CPI index. It's made up of many constituent pieces. I think it's a straightforward question to say, is this rate now at the top line? Is it the all items top line? Or is it a lower index that was cherry-picked by Waste Management and given to them by the previous council? Is it the top line or one of the other ones? You can't just say all urban consumers, because there's many pieces to the all urban consumers index. So back to what I was originally going to talk about. So we had an interesting meeting at the Planning Commission the other day, where one of my favorite pet peeves is that I don't think we are very respectful of businesses and their money and their expenditures when they come here. And I think that the reason why we only have one coffee company in town is because only the strongest weeds can grow through concrete. So when we run businesses through a gauntlet, basically, and say we have to do a fact-finding hearing, which is what a public hearing is supposed to be, over things that we've well established are not a problem, we're costing them extra months of rent just to even open up. You've got to pay an extra 3 to 6 months of rent to go through the process that I don't think is necessary. And I think it's high time that we look at this process and revamp it, reclassify it, whatever. Do something that's look, we don't need a public hearing for the 5th vet clinic in a shopping center. If we've already done it 4 times and we already know they need wall installation, write that into a code. And so if somebody wants to do it, say, here, yeah, no problem. It's allowed, put the wall insulation in. It's done. You could save them 2 or 3 months worth of rent, which might be $10,000 a month. If people don't come here because they don't want to deal with it. They find out you have to do a CUP, like a major CUP, and do a public hearing. They peace out and they go somewhere else. It's not just here. I don't want to put it just on Corona, but it is a problem, and we do need to look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, do we have any more speaker cards?
Mayor, no, we do not.
Okay. Moving on to public hearings. Item number 16, the continued public hearing and election for annexation number 35 into Community Facilities District number 2016-3, Maintenance Services. Does any council member want a staff report on this? Okay. The public hearing is now open. Ms. Edwards, do you have proof of publication and mailing of the notice of the public hearing?
Mayor, yes, I do.
Ms. Edwards, have any, what are you laughing at? Oh. So I had dental work done and so I'm having to focus, yeah. Ms. Edwards, do you have proof of publication and mailing of the notice of public hearing?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, have any written protests been received?
No, I have not received any written protest.
Ms. Edwards, are there any registered voters within the area to be annexed to the CFD, and if so, how many?
There are no registered voters.
Ms. Edwards, have the owners of all taxable property proposed to be annexed to the CFD agree to hold the special election on August 16th, 2023?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Ms. Edwards, do you agree to hold the special election on August 16th, 2023?
Yes, I do.
So help you God. Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
We do not have any speaker cards for this item.
The public hearing is now closed. All right, this item will require 2 motions, and motions do not need to be read. Tom? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Oh, all right. Do we have a second?
I'll, Miss Edwards, I will second.
All right. Please vote. Okay, that item passes.
I will not second.
The recommendation is that the city council adopt the following resolution. Resolution number 2023-088. Ms. Edwards, have you received any ballots, and have you canvassed the ballots and tallied the results?
Mayor, yes, I received 1 ballot and all votes are cast in favor of levying the special taxes.
Do we have a motion?
I'll motion. Miss Edwards, I will motion.
Please vote. Okay, that motion passes 5-0. All right, so that's the recommendation that the city council adopt the following resolution. Resolution number 2023-089. Moving on to administrative reports. Number 17, the Corona Transit Comprehensive Operational Analysis Final Report to restructure fixed route services and bus fares. Ronald Kilcoyne, did I say that right? Okay, consultants and transportation management and design will present this item.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, for introducing this presentation. Before we get into Mr. Kilcoyne's presentation, I just wanted to provide a quick introduction of the item. So this is an ongoing project that has been going on for the last 18 months for a comprehensive analysis of our local public transit system, including our Corona Cruiser and Dial-A-Ride. We've had an extensive outreach with both our ridership as well as our community to get their preferences and come up with a really well-rounded plan that identifies some recommended strategies to improve ridership, customer experience, service reliability, quality, and cost effectiveness. So we have some recommendations that are going to be provided to you through this presentation, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Ronald Kilcoyne with Transportation Management and Design to provide the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And good evening, City Council members, Mayor. The City Council is being asked to provide feedback and direction on the proposed service recommendations and the fare changes that are contained in the final report of the Transit Comprehensive Operations Analysis, or COA. So why do we conduct a COA? It is basically to take a good temperature of the transit system, to find ways to better serve existing customers, to find strategies to attract new customers, and to make sure that the system is operating as efficiently and effectively as possible and providing a good service to all of the residents of Corona. So how are Corona's transit operations funded? 80% of the fixed route and 90% of the Dial-A-Ride expenses are covered through various state and federal grants, with the balance covered with the city's fair share, which is fares, advertising revenues. There's the AB 22766 bus pass subsidy program, and if necessary, the general fund covers that. The existing system consists of 2 lines, the blue line and the red line, as are shown on this slide. Service is provided Monday through Saturday from 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., as well as on Saturdays from 6:30 to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 9 to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. And that is supplemented by a paratransit service available to individuals with disabilities or seniors. That's provided, the paratransit service is provided, or Dial-A-Ride service provided throughout the city. We did, part of this project, we did do an inventory of all of the bus stops in the city of Corona. We wanted to make sure that, now, bus stops have different levels of amenities. The factors that go into that is, number one, of course, is making sure that they're ADA accessible. And then when you look at ridership statistics to determine which are the busiest stops that need more amenities. of course, that's subject to funding availability. You can't necessarily provide shelters every place you'd want to do that. And therefore, one of the things we looked at is shade as an alternative to shelters. As we can see here on the slide, we had 4 categories of stops depending on the level of amenities. And through this inventory that took place last summer, all the stops have signs. 86% of the stops do have seating, and I've worked with a number of small transit systems around the country, and this, I believe, is the highest number of stops that have seating here in Corona. A third of the stops also have trash receptacles, almost a third have shelters, but when you combine shelters and over half the stops do have shade, whether it's from shelters or from trees, which, I obviously like shelters everywhere in the summertime, but comparatively speaking, that is a high number of stops compared to other comparable cities. This process began in the spring of 2022. At that point, we started off with data collection, where we did a 100% ride check. That means that we rode every single trip on a weekday and every single trip on a Saturday to collect boardings and alightings at every stop, identify how many people are on the buses, and also looked at on-time performance and the reasons for if buses were not running on time, and conducted a community survey on board of all the riders, giving all riders an opportunity to participate in that survey, as well as an online community survey to extend the rest of the community that were not either of non-riders, former riders, or people that weren't riding the particular day that we were out doing the survey. That was followed by a summary of findings, which was, of course, collecting all the data that we collected there, but also looking at what we call replica data, which is a source of software that looks at all travel patterns, so we could see how all residents in Corona travel, when they travel, where they travel, and identify trends to see where transit might be able to provide a better service. And that helped identify unmet needs through that. Then we developed alternatives, which we'll talk to you. We also showed those alternatives to you in November when I made a presentation here to the City Council. And then after we had the feedback from the City Council with the alternatives, we did another round of outreach, and then we were able to develop the recommendations that we're coming to you tonight. You may recall from the November meeting that we presented 3 scenarios, which I'll explain in the subsequent slides in more detail. However, the council at that time did recommend that we look at scenario 2, and we also took that out to the public. We were basically trying to make sure that in this, we were looking at, meeting unmet needs, coverage, reliability, productivity, and, the costs. By coverage being expanding service to more destinations, and maintaining coverage to existing things, as well as updating the schedules to improve reliability. So scenario 1, one of the things that one element out of the outreach was the need for more frequency. We were working with limited resources. We looked at creating a fixed route that provided half-hour service instead of hourly service along the busiest areas where the fixed route was heavy, and then creating microtransit, which is an on-demand service similar to Dial-A-Ride, but using a software that allows people to book trips pretty much instantaneously, similar to Uber or Lyft, but only on a shared ride vehicle for the rest of the city. However, this option did increase the operating costs by almost 40%. Scenario 2, which was the preferred scenario, involved having three fixed routes utilizing 4 buses that we streamlined and then adding a microtransit zone in the areas that, in areas that don't currently have service, but also did not seem to have conditions that would support fixed route service, and also providing access to 10 destinations that are outside of that zone, including a few that were not served by fixed route. And then scenario 3 was simply status quo, making no changes. This was obviously the least costly scenario, but it also did not address any of the elements that we were trying to fix. So once we met with the council, we did a further follow-up with the community, to go over these specific scenarios. As you can see here, we did a number of in-person events. We also had a virtual meeting, and then also had another, opportunity for more online surveying. It went to great lengths to make sure that we reached out to as many people as possible. Sudesh and Cynthia here went to a number of senior centers and other facilities to reach out over the next few months. And what we heard, as you can see from this slide, is that the overwhelming response was, again, scenario 2 was the preferred response. And likewise, not only did 2/3 of the people respond to that, but you can sort of also looked at only 4% really wanted the status quo. So obviously there is a desire for change, for improvement to the system. Scenario 2 has a number of benefits. As you can see from this slide, we streamlined the existing routes, and by streamlining means that they're straighter, they don't make as many jogs and turns and deviations, and this speeds up the service and provides faster service to key destinations. We increased the direct service to the retail area around Ontario and California, because when we looked at the replica data that showed what the travel patterns are, we found that there were definitely very strong, a very large number of travel in all directions from that area, much stronger than anywhere else in the city. We provided more direct service from senior housing to the senior center, to the library, as well as to this retail area that we mentioned. Some of the senior apartments and complexes now have direct service, will have direct service where they currently don't. We made sure that we retained and improved access to the middle and high schools. We do introduce an on-demand microtransit service in areas that are difficult to serve by fixed route. We try to reduce the overlap with the RTA Route 1, which provides a 15-minute service 7 days a week. And we eliminated unproductive route segments. And as you can see, there was very little flack from the idea of reducing service. For as far as bus stops are concerned, we will maintain stops where service is retained. We'll add new stops, add stops on the new segments. Our target is a quarter-mile spacing between stops. On the premise, people will walk a quarter-mile to the stop, but we also want to that's sort of the sweet spot between minimizing walking distance and minimizing delay from having too many stops and moving the things. Stops will be located as far side as possible. That is both the safety as well as a time-constrained area. And also a bus stop amenity program will be developed to cover that area. So what are the next steps? Implementing a new service does involve a lot of steps. It's not just a simple thing saying, hey, let's change the routes tomorrow and everything will be great. So there will be a need to bring on a project manager that oversees that. And as you can see from this slide here, the number of steps are extensive, ranging from writing schedules, training, providing public outreach, making sure that, dealing with the new bus stop locations, or you have to get approvals and that. Selection of purchase of fleet, if we want to have new vehicles for microtransit, what have you. Selection and integration of ITS, or Intelligent Transportation System, which will provide, improve the overall dispatching, provide more accurate data. We don't have to go out and ride every trip, and also be able to provide real-time information for the customers that they can know, gee whiz, is the bus coming in a few minutes? They don't have to sort of guess where that is, as well as making sure that we have appropriate bus stop amenities at the bus stop locations. And, for an in-depth list of the implementation activities, there is the final report addendum that's there. And then finally, the next thing is the proposed fare structure, proposing to align the fares with RTA's fares so that there is a consistent fare that people pay traveling through, and also to make sure that the city's fare box obligation of 10% for dial-a-ride and 20% for fixed routes is achieved. So the recommendations for the City Council is approve the service recommendations that are evaluated as part of the COA, and to authorize staff to move forward with the implementation of Scenario 2, and to approve the updated fare structure. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Kilcoyne. Do my colleagues have any questions?
Just want to say thank you. Really happy to see this move forward, and this is, I love the outreach. I love the information getting back to people on the draft plan, and including that information in, and I'm really excited about it going forward. So good job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Steiner? Councilmember Casillas?
Thank you for this. It's been, again, a long time coming, and I really want to thank Ms. Paul and Ms. Lara, who really led the efforts on community outreach. You did an excellent job. Excellent job. So thank you for that. I am curious, I know we did an assessment about shade. Is there a way, and I wonder, and this is a question for Mr. Ellis, I think, if there is a way that we could assess, our bus stops and our urban reforestation efforts and see if we could plant a few more trees specifically near the bus stops, if that's the best way to get shade. Because I recognize that if we've got shades in some and we're better than other cities, that's great, but can they all have shade? Because it's really hot during the summer. Is that something we could look into?
If council would like us to do that assessment, we certainly could.
Is that going to require me to fill in a future agenda item?
No, just
because I'll do that.
No, I think if all your colleagues or a majority of your colleagues would like to ask staff to do that, we'd be happy to.
Okay. We got three majority.
I don't
trees.
disagree with you, but I thought that I saw that part of the next steps would be to assess the bus stops themselves and kind of tell, so some of them do have shade structure,
Yes.
but then I guess we're already doing it, so we would know which ones don't have any shade. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've done the TMD team did an assessment of our existing and also of the proposed new locations. Now, we have to fine tune those locations. And so as we get to the fine tuning, as we get to the design of the new bus stop locations, the amenities, what have you, what we'll do is we'll work with the Parks and Facility team to make sure that we marry those efforts. So
Wonderful.
wherever we can, a tree can be planted without it obstructing ADA travel.
Well, thanks. I'm excited and glad that there's already a concerted effort there. Remind me, how do non-tech using riders access the microtransit?
They can call, and the dispatcher would have the same app that the public does. So if they can't use the app themselves, they would call in, and then the dispatcher would use the app to schedule the trip for them.
Yeah, and I want to really reiterate and reassure you, if it's one thing that I know is that not everybody has a smartphone, and even some of us that do don't necessarily rely on it for very much other than phone calls and texts. So we really know that our seniors are one of our biggest users, and we know that they need accommodations, and so we will have every accommodation available, phone, email, other than these smart applications available to those riders.
Okay. And one more question. The dial-a-ride rate proposed to go to $350, is that $350 per ride or $350 per day? So if they had a round trip, that would be a $7 trip. That would be a $7 day.
That is correct.
Are there any programs that our folks can get on to get reduced rates for dial-a-ride?
Yeah, right. Well, we're going to be using LC Top funds to subsidize those free fares. We've already submitted the allocation. We're expecting to receive the approval of that grant, and it's just going to be valid for 3 years. So
what would the rate be then?
So the rate will continue to be, if that program gets approved, it'll still be free fares for the seniors.
Free
For
fares.
3 years.
For 3 years.
Even though our fare will be increasing $3.50, they won't be paying anything. If that allocation does not get approved, then we'll use AB 2766 funds to subsidize. So either way, they'll still, if it's not free, it'll be stay $2.50 for 2 years at least.
Got it. So 350 is what the rate is scheduled to be until we get either full coverage from this grant for the 3 years, and if we don't get that, then subsidized for 2 years, and it'll be at 250, you said?
Correct, it'll stay the same.
Okay, just because, and I know to some it might not feel like a lot, but $7 on a fixed income is a lot. And then lastly, I just want to say, it's been a long time coming, and it was mostly because of COVID, but I'm so happy to see that Vintage Terrace is finally going to get bus access again.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I'm good. Jackie took all my comments, so.
I just had one question. Could you go to page 17 of the slide for me really quick? Or slide 17? I was just curious because it says youth K through 12 at $1.75, and then it says children. What is this like 3 and under, or what? How do they define children? Like, what is the age group?
48 inches.
I'm sorry?
48 inches.
Oh, it's by height.
Height. Roller coaster ride. Yes.
So okay, so if somebody's a shorter stature. So if our city attorney goes on, who's clearly not K through 12, but under 48 inches, do they pay the child rate, or do they? Okay, so it's by height.
Yes.
All right. This is the one time that the kids are not going to want to be tall enough to ride this ride. Gotcha.
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have any questions, or do we have any speaker cards from the public, Ms. Edwards?
Mayor, no, we do not. Oh, we have one.
Didn't know we were going to get done that quick. I want to thank you. Ms. Casillas, look, I want to thank you. Okay, I know that right after you got in office, you went to Vintage Terrace, and I appreciate that. It was what? Well, I know that you went to Vintage Terrace and you went and talked to people, and I know this has been a topic for you. This has been a thing. You went over and met the people and knew what was going on, and I didn't like how the whole thing went down when they took the service away because we bought stupid buses that we didn't need. And why it went away, but you've been on this, and so this has been a thing, and I want to thank you for it. So, and this plan, it makes a lot of sense. It seems kind of obvious that you would say, well, who's using the buses and where do they need to go, and then draw the routes around that. Apparently, we hadn't done that before. It didn't seem like we had done that before, and we did it now. So. I really like it, and so it makes a lot of sense when you look at the map. It kind of makes sense that it's going to work. So I want to thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Do we have a motion?
Miss Edwards, all motion.
I think Ms. Casillas moved.
I guess I'll just vote. guys.
Jackie moved.
I would like to make the motion,
And then I
please.
seconded.
I'd
If
like
Jim
to
already hasn't
withdraw
pushed the
my
button
motion.
already.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 18, administrative report, the Draft Trails Master Plan Phase 2 review. Tim Bevins, consultant from Alta Planning, and Moses Cortez, Facilities, Parks, and Trails Manager, will present this item.
Good evening, council. Thank you for your time. We've been working on this project now for quite some time, and we've been chipping away through our master plan. So we're excited to get this one in front of you. I got to present to Parks Commission last week, and now I get the luxury of passing this off on to Tim. So he's going to go through the presentation, and then at the end, if you have any questions for us, we'd be more than happy to answer them. So Tim, with that, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Moses, and good evening. I'm thrilled to be here to present the final draft of the Corona Trails Master Plan, Phase 2. My name's Tim Bevins. I'm a planner and designer with Alta Planning and Design, and Trails Master Planning is part of our bread and butter. So we're thrilled to be doing this work here in Corona. So the ask tonight is for council to review the draft Trails Master Plan and provide feedback as we look towards making final edits and look towards adoption. I am going to provide a relatively brief overview of the process to develop this plan, and then I will present some of the newer material that has not been presented to council since our last gathering. So this is the second phase of the Trails Master Planning effort. And in fact, there was a prior phase to that. So phase 0 was a Trails Master Inventory in 2019. That was an attempt to collect and catalog everything under the sun in the city of Corona that was considered a trail. And I use that word specifically because the understanding of trail by members of the public was different. And so we wanted to make very, very certain that we had all the trails in the network and we understood which ones were under city purview, which ones were under Cleveland National purview, Cleveland National Forest purview, and all the rest. So the 2022 Trails Master Plan Phase 2 does precisely that. So Phase 1, or Trails Master Inventory, collect everything. Phase 1 was get as many concepts and potential trails on maps as possible. And Phase 2 was to consider those two previous phases to develop this project. So the vision and the goals for this plan, of course, are to make the city making Corona the city of trails, which is a very progressive goal. And we want to make sure that we have both connections throughout the city as well as to the abundant resources in the Cleveland National Forest. So by closing gaps in our trail network and providing opportunities for people to use trails not specifically or not exclusively as a mode of recreation, but also for completing daily errands. And that means weaving trails into the city fabric so that people can complete daily tasks or take their dog for a walk or whatever that may be via a pleasant experience out in nature. The current state of trails and opportunity analysis that we did, of course, we investigated the inventory in Phase 1. We also looked at previous plans from adjacent cities, from the city of Corona as well as from adjacent cities so that we could connect to various trail opportunities. We also looked at existing and proposed trails. We looked at like cities, and then we prioritized the trails that came out of all of the efforts and conducted an impact analysis as well. This map here shows the different types of interior and exterior trails. I think it's important to highlight for this body that when we engaged in our public process, we heard from many of your constituents that indeed we're trails lovers, but from their perspective, the trails were in the Cleveland National Forest along the city's southwestern border. So we want to take into account access to those trails, and we also want to look at trails that could happen within the city boundaries as well. So that's what we did with the plan. The analysis for interior, so looking within city boundaries, this analysis is really helpful. This shows a half-mile walk shed and a 2-mile bike shed. So how far can one reasonably get in a half-mile or on bike or on foot? And these are kind of stand-ins for those distances. So what you see is that there is some gaps in service for trail access as it stands within the city. And so this helped us later on during our prioritization phase to find opportunities to provide new trail opportunities to underserved residential areas. We also conducted an origin and destination analysis, which collected anonymized Bluetooth data for how people moved throughout the city. Specifically, we were interested in where were people coming to Skyline, knowing that so much action, so much travel was coming to Skyline. Are those your constituents? And we found that the majority of travel was indeed coming from within city limits. We also looked at the 2 Metrolink stations within the city, and we were able to track movement patterns of people through those Metrolink stations, and we tagged that pattern to the existing and proposed trails network from the 2 previous phases as well as our own. And so that allowed us to, again, in our prioritization phase, understand which potential trails might help connect people to, again, using as a daily service rather than just a recreational facility. So now you can get to Metrolink station, for example. We also, of course, coordinated with outside jurisdictions. We talked to the Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, Riverside County Transportation, Riverside County Parks and Open Space District, and of course, the United States Forest Service and the Cleveland National Forest. All of this was really important because Riverside County as an entity has many properties within city limits that present great opportunities for building trails. Specifically, I'm speaking about flood control trails, flood control channels that are mandated to have maintenance channels or maintenance roads along them. So those often seem like a great opportunity to put a trail nearby. This is a map highlighting the CNF, the Cleveland National Forest in particular, and all the trails. What's important to call out in this image is that when we engaged in our public process and we spoke to your constituents, there was a palpable demand for access to the National Forest paired with disappointment that over the past 20, 50 years of just the city's natural growth, some access points have been developed over. So there was a desire for this plan to find opportunities to preserve access before it goes away in another 20, 50 years, whatever that may be. So that's something that we heard from your constituents loud and clear. We also looked at like cities, Altadena, Laguna Beach, Riverside, Santa Clara, Temecula. And these images are from Altadena. Altadena in particular presents some good examples for the city of Corona because it also has an abutment with a large natural area, a lot of trails that kind of just peter out into the neighborhoods adjoining that natural area. And so they have relatively small footprint signs and access points to help distribute the amount of people coming to that natural area from either other parts of the city or nearby. And that might be a model to emulate for City of Corona. We had a trails working group that convened 6 times. It was comprised of mountain bikers, hikers, dog walkers, trail runners, residents. So we had a lot of different perspectives, and we worked through a lot of desires and competing interests. We had a very productive session. So trail safety, indigenous land acknowledgement was something that came up often in our conversations. And a lot of people in the Trails Working Group were excited about that. And then we worked as a group to understand why some challenges existed or where we might be able to add in new trails that were on the backs of the hands of members of the working group, but were not captured within the Trails Master Plan inventory that occurred prior to this phase. So an example of that, this is a slide, an example of slides that were created by a Trails Working Group member. I really want to tip my hat to the Trails Working Group. They were heavily involved in the development of this plan. We had folks go out, make presentations for us, take photos, share their feedback with the rest of the group, and frankly discuss the costs and benefits of what those access points might be and give us as a consultant team and staff to investigate some of these options and see what opportunities may be there to make those connections. So here's an example, again, of Eagle Road and the different challenges that present access points to the existing road that's on Forest Service property. I should note when we spoke to the Forest Service, they were generally agreeable with access onto their land, but they were agnostic about what happens on city property. So we need to toe that line to be able to provide connectivity into the Cleveland National Forest, but also understand that it needs to happen on city property. The plan, in addition to those interior trails, also identified 5 exterior top trails. These were called out by the Trails Working Group. And they may be obvious, but for the record, that's Skyline Drive, Eagle Road, Bedford Motorway, the Fresno Canyon Trail, and the Santa Ana River Trail. So 4 of those 5 trails are within the Cleveland National Forest. And so you can see that there's a real desire to make those connections. And so the plan highlights connectivity challenges and opportunities to preserve and protect trail access for these locations. So that was Skyline Drive and looking at access from Foothill Parkway and what we might be able to do. At Eagle Road, we're highlighting challenging access points and what, again, the city may be able to run down and provide access to the Cleveland National Forest. When we look at Bedford Motorway, again, near Eagle Glen Golf Course, there's desire and people are making their way up to the Bedford Motorway, but some of them are doing it via an existing maintenance path that goes near the golf course, but it's all in this extra space that may not be necessarily owned by the city, going back to that connections with Cleveland National Forest versus city. So the plan specifically calls out opportunities to explore and potentially make those connections. Finally, Fresno Motorway, or second to last, I should say, Fresno Canyon. We look at both sides of Fresno Canyon, so both off Green River as well as off Oak Ridge, to provide connectivity and parking. And also we start to talk in this plan about on-street connections. For Green River, for example, the experience of getting there on a bicycle or on foot, and looking towards safety improvements there as well. Finally, the Santa Ana River Trail. So we looked at both ends of the new alignment that is being built to connect to Norco and to Orange County. And there is a constructed portion. The largest challenge with the Santa Ana River Trail is mostly around the alignment around the Prado Dam and working with the Army Corps of Engineers to figure that out. And so our plan, while waiting on that to be figured out, looks at the access points that we know are fixed and we know that that is going to be built. And so we provide connectivity recommendations there as well. This slide that you can see, turning our attention towards the interior trails from phase 1. Purple is what was provided to us by the Trails Working Group. So there's just a couple, but I think they're really important because they're the fine grain, the nuanced input that really helped us with some connections. The blue line is existing trails that were either captured from the Trails Master Inventory or phase 1. And of course, green is proposed from the phase 1 Trails Master Plan. So those are all of the lines that are then subsequently prioritized. So when we looked at trail prioritization, we used 4 criteria themes for evaluating and then prioritizing the trails. This is, so I don't have my glasses. This is the feasibility, the access and equity, safety and user experience, and community support. So what does that mean? Well, something will get rated higher if the city owns it, because we understand that that makes it easier to implement the trail. There's no agreements that need to be entered into. From access and equity, we looked at this both ways. We looked at it from underserved communities and disadvantaged communities, and we also looked at it from providing connectivity to key connections, such as the Metrolink stations that I mentioned previously. Safety and user experience looked at different criteria, such as adjacent roadway speed, proximity to collisions involving bicycles and pedestrians, to help inform areas where there might be opportunities or more need for improvement. Finally, community support was it raised by the Trails Working Group? Is it something that there's a real demand for within that body? So this slide, we looked at 77 total trails reviewed. Again, purple is from the inventory, green is from phase 1, and gold is from the Trails Working Group. And we reviewed this both through site visits, GIS analysis, talking with the Trails Working Group, as well as with city staff. And we applied the prioritization tool, as you see here. So we also developed interior circuits. So we have a list that goes 1 through 77. And those trails are important, and the prioritization is helpful, but we also recognize that one person's ideal trail is another person's undesirable trail. A steep trail for a mountain biker is desirable, a steep trail for someone on a casual stroll may not be so much. So in addition to prioritizing the trails themselves, we also look at specific types or special use case trails so that we are not providing just one master list to the city that only states the top projects. So on this slide, we do have our top 5 projects. And I'm going to go through those 5 much like we did the exterior trails. So the relative ranking here is that the green trails are the higher scores, the ones that worked better when run across that matrix criteria that I just went over. These are segments that scored. There are also segments that scored identically. So they are 77 points, 65 points, whatever that may be. And so some of the trails are tied technically in their ranking, but then again, this underscores the need for, excuse me, I apologize, for city to consider each of the potential trails in and of themselves as it relates to the specific surroundings and the desires of the community. So with that said, the first interior trail is Public Safety Way. This is trail number 70 that was proposed in the Trails Master Plan Phase 1. This connects to from Lincoln to Coda via a flood control channel, and then as you can see, it provides a connection to trail number 2. The second trail is running along Rincon Street. So this goes towards the airport and connects to the Santa Ana River Trail alignment. So on the northeastern side of the city's alignment with the Santa Ana River Trail, this is the second highest ranking potential trail. The third trail, the third interior trail, is along Foothill Parkway. So this provides multiple connections to city parks, Cleveland National Forest, Skyline Drive, of course, and provides a safer and more inviting space to walk and bike given the number of vehicles. Some of this component could be off-street or could be on-street. There are existing facilities, but the intent here is to provide a continuous and high-quality experience for people accessing the multiple trail opportunities and also into and of itself. Our fourth trail, Trail D, is on Ontario Avenue. It's a crosstown trail. Again, came out of the Trails Master Plan Phase 1. This is an off-street but paved trail. So it would not be within the right-of-way, but it would be paved. And this links up to other higher scored trails as well, such as trail ranked number 12, as you can see in that inset map that connects north-south along the flood control channel from Skyline to Corona High School. And Trail E, our fifth trail, runs from Ontario across town, linking to the flood control channel near Lorna Street and connecting to 6th Street, and again, trail number 12. So we're starting to provide some real linkages here. As I mentioned, though, that number, that ranking helps us, but it is not a panacea. We also want to make sure that we're serving multiple users in your community. So we looked at, what those trails might be. So the pink circle that you can see provides access to the Cleveland National Forest. It's also a mountain biking hotspot. Many of those trails are quite steep. So those are areas to look for providing services to people that want to get to the CNF, as well as mountain bike trails. The blue rectangle towards the center of the city is a great trail for commuting via active transportation or connecting to Metro Rail. The green rectangle is a trail that's as you recall from the service map that we looked at prior, just additional recreational opportunities to communities or neighborhoods that do not have trail access currently within that half-mile and 3-mile buffer. And then finally, the yellow that you can see off in the northwest corner of the city are trails that help close gaps in the city sidewalk system or provide lower stress facilities on adjacent roadways. So that box is highlighting Green River Road, which does precisely that. Finally, we also looked at trail circuits. So we were asked to stitch together some of these trails to provide continuous networks, and doing so via the trails that, one, make the most sense as an entity to themselves, but also from a high-ranking experience from the trail ranking that I just went over. So their alignments are along prioritized trails and they connect to other trails. The intent here is to make it very easy for people to hop on, hop off the trail network as they work their way through their daily life. It can also be a larger loop circuit for people going for runs or going for hikes, whatever that might be. They don't need to complete the entire circuit, but the idea is that we have it in place and it provides several linkages around the community. So that's the presentation, that's the update. Next steps is a tentative September 5th council adoption of the Trails Master Plan, Phase 2. But before that, I would like to say thank you, and we're here to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins. I appreciate it. I know that my colleagues and I all have comments, but I do know that there are some comments that were emailed in, and I wanted to see if there are any speaker cards from the public. So I'll go to speaker cards from the public first, and then if you could read in the email.
Okay, we do have one speaker card for this item.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, John Donaldson from Applegate here in Corona. And I was one of the members of the advisory committee. And as a member and not as a leader of the committee, my comments are mine and may or may not reflect those of, what would be the legal description I should go through here just to get it so I'm out of trouble? Anyway. Several of the members in that committee, that advisory group, were very knowledgeable, extremely knowledgeable about it. And I think as you saw from the plans he presented, he showed pictures with dots and lines and bicycle paths through canyons and all kinds of stuff. I was very impressed and certainly had no idea what they were talking about. So we had a number of very knowledgeable people, and I think that was one of the challenges that this plan sort of walks by. I don't know if it acknowledges it. I think he mentioned it just briefly. But we had a lot of enthusiasts on the committee and not average citizens. We didn't have average dog walkers on the committee, and we didn't have average moms who pushed their strollers. So we're not getting their input in this thing. And I think one of the challenges we have before you get called on to vote on it at the next council meeting is, can we find a way to put input from the average citizens who are going to be out there using some of these trails? Can we find a way to accumulate some of their data? That's just one thing. The city staff, by the way, and the contractor, we worked very well together. I don't think anybody had a single complaint about how the meetings were, the advisory committee meetings were conducted. The only complaint I would take away, and I don't know if Mr. Cortez or our consultant would, they were probably happy, the meetings were a little short, because we'd really start getting into it, and then, well, we got to close up City Hall here at 7:30 tonight, so we have to go. And we didn't really have, sometimes, as you all well know, you get into a topic and you just run out of time to hammer through it. So we had a little bit of that challenge, nothing to do with the city staff or the contractor. My fellow, again, I'll give a shout out to my fellow members. They were wonderful. When we went into this, we were asked what we thought would be a wonderful accomplishment at the end. And I said, if everybody could walk away with a plan in their hand they thought was great, if you gave me that plan today and said, where would you start? I wouldn't know where to start. I don't have enough information, even after all those meetings, to go through that. My last shout out, while I'm running out of time, is to the tribal representatives who showed up. We had them in our meeting 3 or 4 times. Very helpful group to have on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, would you read in the comments now?
Yes, we have 2 written comments from our Parks and Recreation Commissioners, Michelle Wentworth and Tom Munoz. Dear council members, the August Parks and Recreation Commission's feedback to the staff on the Trails Master Plan centered around its need for continued revisions. I am sharing my thoughts with you tonight because I believe this document is not ready for adoption. The Trails Master Plan should not be rushed through the review process, as this is an extensive and detailed document. The Parks Commission provided feedback on the plan in a previous review, and some of the important items are not yet incorporated into the current draft document. I would like the commission, the consultant, and the staff to have ample opportunity to discuss the plan thoroughly. I think this document requires enough reimagining and organizational work that the plan should be reviewed in a working group setting with the Parks Commission, staff, consultant, and this meeting be open to the public participation. I suggest tonight that the City Council provide pointed feedback on the Trails Master Plan vision and goals. As admirable as the city's strategic plan is, these statements should not be the majority stand-in for the vision and goals section on page 6 of the city's Bike and Trails project. May I suggest that the vision and goal settings include statements such as a focus on safe, walkable, and bikeable neighborhoods, nature trail preservation and accessibility, a plan for all ages and abilities, promote active transportation, provide more recreation and leisure options, increase physical activity, and improve public health, finding sustainable funding sources and cross-agency partnerships. In my opinion, the most concerning section of the plan are the included design concepts for Skyline Drive and Oxbow. I would like to ask that the City Council to consider that these concepts do not need to be determined in this phase of the Trails Plan and should not be included. These implementation examples are qualitatively and quantitatively different in this section's suggested development in these areas would likely require a separate addendum to the plan. If residents look at the drawings as provided here, they would rightly become alarmed and could correctively assume that they have been bypassed as a point of reference and outreach. Tonight, I would urge the consultant and the City Council to discuss the expectations of each phase of the plan, how many future phases this plan might require, and why future phases are needed. In the end, Corona should adopt an integrated plan for cycling, multi-use pathways, and trails with the primary vision of creating a safe, walkable, and bikeable city that supports the health. And the rest of the comments will be filed with the meeting minutes.
Recently, at the August 8th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, the commissioners were presented with the draft Trails Master Plan Phase 2 document. The commissioners provided feedback at the meeting, but also recognized that previous review feedback had not been incorporated into the current draft document. I deferred to comments provided this evening by Commissioner Wentworth. Among the comments presented by my colleague, which I agree with wholeheartedly, Commissioner Wentworth's comments are centered around the need for continued revisions prior to being adopted. Although the document contains over 300 pages of information, more time is needed to incorporate the master plan's vision and goals. It is extremely important that we revisit the vision and goals, and if necessary, reacquaint ourselves with the vision and goals of the Trails Master Plan. Key items to consider include a focus on safe, walkable, and bikeable neighborhoods, nature trail preservation and accessibility, a plan for all ages and abilities, promote active transportation, provide more recreation and leisure options, increase physical activity, and improve public health, finding sustainable funding sources and cross-agency partnerships. Lastly, and based upon prior experience, please include the community in review of design concepts being planned in our neighborhoods.
Mayor, that's the end of our written comments.
I thought you said that there was 3.
We have 2 written comments and 1 speaker card.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I know that all of my colleagues have lots of comments, so I'll start with you, Councilmember Speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. I will reiterate some of these comments are ones that I made during the first phase. But I wanted to kind of, I went through the plan and made notes as I went through. It's a lot of pages. And I did notice it repeats itself a few times. I know because we're trying to compare different things, and I almost seem like there should be a better way to do that. But I you know, that's something I think that you guys need to work on. The first thing is on page 14, the light green, I can't see at all. Like I staring at it even on the screen here, and you didn't have any page numbers on the slide, so I couldn't. I'd love to refer you back to one of them. I think it was one of the ones in the very beginning. I can't see it. So I think I know where they are, because based on some past or some future ones, I kind of see it. It's all the flood control channel ones. Those, I am petrified of those. You know, I think before any of us were on council, we all heard the complaints from the people at Skyline about people walking behind their home, because when they bought their home, they didn't think, even though they knew there was a trail there, they didn't understand there was going to be hundreds of people walking behind them. These people, some of these folks and some of these trails have lived there for 50 or 60 years. And then all of a sudden, we're going to say, hey, by the way, we're going to have people start walking behind your home. We're going to get barbecued. And especially if we say, yep, we're going to give you guys the thumbs up today with this draft, and then we're going to finalize it in 2 weeks. I just don't see, just for that point alone. I have a lot of other comments, but I wanted to kind of start with that because to me, that's the biggest thing. And you contrast that with the last presentation that we just got on the bus plan. They presented that to the public. They showed options. They gave people a chance to look at what the drafts were. And I mean, we're going to basically, you're asking us to give you back feedback and then adopt it in 2 weeks. And I mean, this is going to impact everybody. And I know that, the theory is that yes, if we do that, doesn't mean we have to do it. But my professional opinion, when you put a line on a map, it means something. And I know when I put a line on a map, it means something. And I think it shows that we have an intention. Whether or not it happens, I don't want anybody to be surprised. And that to me would, if I lived in one of those neighborhoods, I would be not just surprised, I'd be alarmed. So I think there needs to be, to go back and at least do that. And to me, I see the idea of utilizing flood control channels as a way to move. I grew up in Garden Grove until I was 12. I rode my bike everywhere. Whether or not I was supposed to use the flood control channels, I still did. But it was flat, and it was fun, and it was great. Corona's a big, giant alluvial fan. There's nothing fun about riding uphill for 8 miles. It just isn't. I mean, one of the things I cursed my parents when we moved here because I could only ride sideways. I didn't want to ride down because then riding back up, you were, pumping forever. So I just don't see that as a functional, or at least one that's going to, A, we're going to get a lot of use, and B, if we do get use, people are going to be freaked out by it. The Butterfield Trail, the one thing I see missing is that connection to Chino Hills State Park. I think I said that in the first there. One of the reasons why, back before we all got on council, Riverside County Parks wanted to build a access and a staging area off of Auto Center Drive, and the previous council didn't want to do it because they didn't want to have to maintain it, which was insane to me. But one of the main reasons for that was a connection to Chino Hills State Park. And yes, you have to, there's a way. And I know that it was on a list, and I don't know why it dropped off. I want to, again, thank the residents to help with this, the Trails Working Group. They were awesome. I mean, getting, people that use these things on a daily basis to give feedback and have them, engage with us is invaluable, and I can't thank them enough for the information they provided. I had some issues with the Skyline, the parking that was shown. I know that there's just examples, but it was a little bit alarming to see 9 different examples of what a park could look like at Skyline, and 8 of them had parking. Again, I see a problem, because we're going to be running cars up and down those streets that weren't made for that. I know I'd love to see it be some kind of a park and some kind of access, but to have vehicles drive to that neighborhood, try and find a place to park, and if they can't find a place to park, they're driving in and out. And I could see on a Saturday hundreds of cars going up and down those streets, and the conflicts that will come from that are going to be huge. So to me, I think that should be completely taken out. Some comments about the public needs more time with this. There was some talk, I think on page 68, about development policies and having, making sure that we address trails, and we've had an informal. I mean, Ms. Coletta's office has been fantastic about any developer that comes in. She knows the council wants to hear about trails and wants to make sure that we protect them. I think it's a great idea to push that forward and come up with something that actually is as the planning department always wants from us is guidance, and something that's steadfast, and I think that it would be a good idea for us to get there. But the plan just kind of like petered out. It made a kind of recommendation, but then didn't. So I want to make sure that we focus more on that. The active transportation part, I know that active transportation is like the hot thing right now, and it's being funded all over the place, AB 21, and there's, that's program money that will be, it has been around for a long time and is now starting to get used, and there's more opportunity for it. But I didn't see any talk in there at all about, how we can weigh some of these projects and if they can be tweaked to really be deemed as active transportation. And highlight them as active transportation, because frankly, I love using other people's money, and I want to prioritize those projects, and to especially if we can get money for those, we can use money for other things. The northeast side of the city in District 1, I was very underwhelmed by the number of trails, and I know that a lot of the folks that were on the Trails Working Group, I'm familiar with them. I don't think we had any that lived in District 1, and I didn't see any connections to the Norco Hills. I didn't see any connections to any of the open areas over there. And I know there's things, and I'm looking at my friend here in the audience, that we went and walked some areas in Norco that I know there's connections there, and there's a way for us to work with them. And then we said that in the plan that we were going to work with adjacent agencies or look at their adjacent plans or their connections, and we seem to have kind of missed that section. And I don't want the folks in District 1 to think they got slighted on this deal, because there was so much, experience and knowledge of those areas that are in that part of the world that, we ignore it. I thought one of the opportunities missing on page 109 was parking for Skyline. That, we've shied away from parking on the north side of Foothill. Gosh darn. We've shied away from parking on that because it's dangerous to have to cross, but we have access to a trail right below. Isn't there? There's got to be a way to put a stairway or something, and we can make it so people can't cross the street, and they can access the trail and drop right on the trail via some kind of a stairway. Let's see, talked about that part. The Eagle Glen Road access, I think we talked about that last time, and I think I brought up my point about there's no way that you're ever going to get access through a gated community. The HOA will never allow it, and I'm not sure why it's still there. And the private property owner has said he's not going to allow it. So I know that I brought it up the last time about coming off of Crown Ranch, and that road is a city road. Even though some of the residents have said it's a private road, and they put up some signs, it is 100% not. I went into the GIS and clicked on every single parcel, and the city of Corona has access to that, to at least to a large majority of it. Yes, it is ridiculously steep, but bikers like that. So I'd like to see at least in a further evaluation of that piece, and take out, the things that can't happen, or really far, or they're just the hill is too tall to jump over to get there. It makes it a little frustrating, because I think the way that it's noted for Eagle Canyon, that project will never happen in the way that it's noted there. It's a great opportunity. It's fantastic because it used to be there, but that homeowner there is building across the trail, so I don't think that's going to happen. I talked about that part, and that's probably good for now. But I think what I wanted to just reiterate is that this is a big deal. And you're right, we've been working on this plan for a long time. And our residents, especially the ones that will be affected, deserve to have time to chew on this and swallow it and understand it and give us feedback. And because I think if we're allowing just this short window, we're not being who we are, who we've said that we're going to be, and to be transparent. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Steiner.
Yes. Well, thank you. I know everybody put a lot of work into this so far. And I say so far because I think there's still a little bit that needs to be done. I also got a message from my appointed Parks Commissioner, and I wanted to read that as well. Jim, it's simultaneously too much and not enough. I don't think it has any business dabbling in land uses, even theoretically, other than trails. So I agree with Michelle, there is reference to Skyline and Oxbow. So I agree with Michelle, there's reference to Skyline and Oxbow. I would always like to see that the public and work groups have an opportunity to see a draft finished product and provide final input before full ratification. I'm not sure that that opportunity occurred. I still do not have a comprehensive understanding of what it translates in terms of today, of day one action plan. The trails priority table is unclear in terms of which things actually need action. For instance, skin suit is on there, but why? Skin suit will be there whether we do anything or not. The highest priority trail already exists and just needs a gate opened. Do we swing it open and pat ourselves on the back for opening the highest priority trail? It's difficult to discern what we can actually expect out of the plan. Will we fix the bike trails or the bike lanes on Green River, or do we just call it a circuit now? It could totally be that, but we're just uneducated on the process. We got 20 minutes on the topic. So that's 3 of the 5 Parks and Rec commissioners who have chimed in. And they all have a lot of legitimate concerns and questions. And I feel, I have tremendous respect for them. And I know they're advisory, but I have tremendous respect for them and the work that they put in. And I feel like at a minimum, I got to dissect the 310-page document further so I can take all their concerns into account. I'm sure there's good answers for some of them, but for 310 pages, yeah, I went through it, but I didn't read every line. Okay, then I need to do that to address some of these late items that have come to us. So that's all for now.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you. I too called my commissioner, and what's interesting, the earlier comment from a resident saying, maybe we were missing the average person, and I consider myself an average person. I don't go to the trails every day like Jim does. I hike maybe a handful of times in our trails or a year. I've got all the equipment though. I mean, you wouldn't look at I show up and look like a pro, but I'm not. But I do have this grand vision, and I do hope that Corona can become the city of trails. And so, as we're sitting here talking about this plan, what I think is there's all this hope and desire and pent up demand for there to be a connection of dots between what we want and what we have. And it feels like rather than get a clear direction of where we're going with this plan, we just got more and more and more. And so, this has been a long process. It's been a super engaged process. It's been really thorough. We've had a really great consultant on board. People have been heard, but I don't know that we've done a great job interpreting that into a plan. And so I can only speak for myself. When I think of a master plan, I want a plan. I want something that's actionable. And I know that we have, the plan does say a 10-year implementation plan, but even that doesn't feel meaty enough. And it definitely doesn't feel extensive compared to how much material we have here. This is a 300-plus document, and we've got, 4 or 5 pages to implementation. And it just doesn't, I just kind of was hoping that this process would give us a little more clarity, and I don't feel like I have that yet. And barring, learning that taking it a little bit slower or giving it one more go at a draft does something irreparable, then I see no harm in it coming back to us as another draft rather than as a final draft. Because I do believe that in government, when things go from draft to final, sure, at that final stage, you can always stop it and vote it down. It just rarely happens. It rarely happens. So, and even if we're all, I trust my colleagues and we have really extensive conversations, but if there's no harm done, then why don't we just slow it down a little bit and do another round of a draft? So, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. And John Donaldson, you're hiding around over there somewhere. I think it's really cool that you guys had that resident trail group. And it's so impressive that you guys had so much synergy working together. And that means a lot, to me. As for the Parks and Rec Commission, the commissioner that I appointed, Tom Munoz, I get emails from him at random hours of the night, and they're always great emails, and half of them don't even deal with the city of Corona. They deal with other cities, and he'll email me and say, hey, Brea has an arts sculpture program, and if you go drive the city of Brea, you'll see sculptures everywhere. And I was like, no way. And then I drove Brea, and no, that's all I see when I go through the city. But Tom's a landscape architect, and I find his wisdom and his knowledge very valuable. As the rest of the commissioners on Parks and Rec, I'm convinced Matt Olson's 10 times smarter than me. So I'm hoping, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm hoping is to keep the tone of this Master Trails program right, because I think Alta has done a good job, and I know Moses is just beloved by everyone. To keep the tone right, I'm hoping instead of taking this to council, I'm hoping we can do a study session, and if legally possible, a dual study session in the evening time, where the Parks and Rec commissioners are in attendance and the council's in attendance. And then my other hope would be, I'm sorry, Alta dude, what's your name?
Tim Bevins.
Tim Bevins. I'm hoping that you can meet with the the Parks and Rec commissioners ahead of time and speak with them one-on-one or even as a group or whatever doesn't violate a Brown Act, and meet with them and discuss their concerns. And then after that, and some of Wes's things, and although I don't think we need to do anything with Norco, after all that's worked out, then we bring it back to council. So I'm hoping that's where we can go with it.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. My Parks Commissioner reached out to me as well, and was very nice about it. No. And several of the other commissioners did as well. So one of the things that I think is important to say is that our Parks Commission is an advisory commission, and they're there because we appointed them to be there to give us their opinion. And I think that they've done that in spades. So I had some concerns about this. I wanted to know if there was an additional phase after this because I felt that this was incomplete. And in all honesty, Mr. Bevins, I had a really hard time with this presentation, both the one that was sent to us and you going through it. And I try to put myself in somebody who has a casual interest in what's going on, and it was very confusing. And until you started to go through it, I didn't know what most of those slides meant. And so for me, it was very hard to follow. There wasn't any continuity in it, and I didn't understand what all of the slides meant. So to me, it's incomplete, right? There isn't a very clear direction and what we want to do. So my concerns were, how many phases is this going to be? Because I don't think that it's complete the way that it is. And then, I was concerned because there wasn't much policy decision or recommendations in there for us to make. And that kind of leads me to say, what is the message to the public on this presentation as far as, what can they expect? What can they hope that in the next 10-year implementation plan to get out of it? What are they going to be able to do? I was a little concerned that there wasn't just a very clear document on what we have as existing. I happened to, I almost got lost, I think, and I happened to, one of those trail working group meetings, and that was a very engaged group, and these are folks that are on those trails daily, probably multiple times a week, and so they knew a lot of the ins and outs. And so, a 1-page or 2-page, very clear and concise document of what we have, what is available right now. And, how do we want to connect all of those? When you get in some of these slides in the 20s and 30s and where you're talking about connectivity and interior trails and exterior trails, it was very, very hard to follow. And I feel as if I only got maybe 50% of it because I wasn't sure what I was looking at. So I don't think that it is ready for, I don't think it's anywhere close to being ready for final adoption in 2 weeks. If you could rework it and make it very clear and concise in 2 weeks, then maybe it is. But as it sits right now, I would have a hard time adopting it. I would most likely reject it. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but I kind of feel like that's the general consensus, is that this isn't ready for final adoption. And I think that you've got a lot of feedback tonight, not only from this council, but from our commissioners, that we take their feedback very serious. And I know, there's a lot of experience as far as our commissioners. My commissioner, Ms. Kinney, has a lot of experience when it comes to trails, both in the county and here in Corona as well. So when she tells me something, I listen. And if I don't listen, then she yells at me until I listen. So I take what she says very seriously. And I think the other comment that I want to make is, I do also want to hear from the public on this. So we had a great group of enthused stakeholders that participated in the work group, and they are, I would call them super users of our trail systems. But that, in order for us to become a trail city, that means that we have to get not just the super users, but we have to get multiple users. Mr. Donaldson said it very, very clearly about getting, folks with strollers that are walking these trails, get their opinion, and where can they park, where do they feel safe, all that type of stuff. So I think that that's a component that's missing, is from the public, what's their feedback and what do they want to see? So I think that that's probably all the feedback that we have. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, again, about clarity, like, I guess the one thing that I hear all of us saying is that we want something more. What I am concerned about is that I don't know that we ourselves are being very clear about what it is that we want more of. And I don't know that I know that. And I don't think that we're giving staff a very clear direction here on where to go to next. Mr. Ellis, am I pegging this right?
Yes, in part. I've written down a lot of notes that I've heard. Some of them are somewhat substantive. So let me give you an example. And by the way, thank you for the feedback and the candor. We appreciate that. That's what we want. In terms of actionable feedback, it would be useful to get some clear direction, and I'll give you an example of that. Would you like us to remove all trails from flood control areas? If that's the direction of council, to take that out of the master plan, we need that direction to. I know that we have, Councilmember Speak has said that he doesn't want to see trails along our flood controls areas. If that's council's desire, give us that direction, and we'll remove it from the whole plan. But that's kind of the specificity that we need when we hear from one council member that they would like something. It's tricky to know if that reflects all of your views, and if it is, great, then we will proceed with that direction. If it doesn't, that clarity is useful. On other points, like more public participation, absolutely, we hear you loud and clear. We can bring out a draft plan back to the public and seek more input before we bring that back, and we can also bring this to a study session if you'd like. So if council's desire is for us to make some substantive modifications so that we bring that out to the community, then I would love to either have some quick motions made or do some thumbs up, and I can run you through a list of things that I have, and then I'll ask the team for their feedback as well to see if I missed anything.
I think the only direction that I'm prepared to give is twofold. One is that I feel like I need more time with this. Okay. And I feel like this might be a good topic for us to have a study session on and maybe go step by step on. And two, that the only thing that I can tell you that I felt was truly missing was that clarity of implementation. But I can't, if you have me vote on these items right now, I won't be able to give you an educated vote.
Okay. I think I'm seeing some nodding heads from your colleagues. So would you like us, prior to making any decisions tonight, bring this back to a study session for you to chew on a little bit more?
Yep. Study session, and can the commissioners be invited?
A study session is open to the public, right? So it would be wonderful if we could also, before that study session, I don't know, maybe work in a couple of surveys or more notifications on social media to ask people, hey, if this is really important to you, please come to the study session or please write in to the council. And having that presentation, we're really good about putting that presentation live like the Thursday when we post the agenda, so that's available for folks to digest. I think that's enough for me.
So I do want to tack on, Mr. Ellis. I think the challenge, and I agree with Councilmember Casillas, is that I'm not really prepared to make any specific suggestions today because the presentation was very confusing to me. And I don't think that I got page by page enough detail and explanation. If it wasn't for Mr. Bevins telling me about something on the page, when I read those, I really had a hard time understanding what I was looking at and what information I can extract from that. So for me, I have to rely on my colleagues, I have to rely on, the advisory commission, that, the Parks Commission, to get some of that information. And I wasn't the only one that had that same exact reaction. It was very hard to understand. And so I do agree that this should be a study session. I would prefer that it was the only item on that study session, simply because it's going to take that entire time, and that we can get the public. But when they're going through this, for myself, for my edification, it needs to be a lot simpler to understand. And that way I'm able to draw the conclusions that they want me to. So for me to give specifics, it's very difficult because I didn't understand a lot of it.
Thank you. So if I see enough nodding heads here, schedule for a study session, single item, and then we'll try to get dig into some more details at that time.
And I would say that maybe in the in-between, that the rest of us provide you with items that we want more clarification on, or items that, as we dive into it more.
Items 1 through 30, page 1 through 33.
No, but it might, because I genuinely think that we're struggling for clarity, so that might be helpful for staff to know what it is that's in our head.
Absolutely, we would welcome that. Feel free to send those over to me, and we'll make sure that we have answers to any specific questions that you have. Thank you very much for the feedback tonight, and thank you to the team. Over a 4-year effort, great work. We're close. We're going to keep working at it until we get it just right. So thank you for the feedback.
Yes, thank you. And you're right. I do not want to diminish the work that has been done. I know that it's great, and that there's a lot of things going in. So I don't want to diminish it. It's just we're not there yet. Okay, moving on to item number 19, which is an administrative report, fiscal year 2024, community-based grant program funding recommendations. Viola Van, management analyst 2, will present the item.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try for the trifecta today, and since one of the organizations I'm president of or is on the list to be awarded tonight, I need to step out of the room.
Okay, you're going to step out of the room? Have a great night. We'll see you in a little bit.
All right.
Ms. Van, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. We're excited to bring you the Community-Based Organizations, or CBO, grant program funding recommendations for fiscal year 2024. All right.
I'm on the board of Peppermint Ridge, so I got to step out.
I'm much busier than my colleagues, so I'm not on all these boards.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, if nothing else, half of the questions that were probably going to come out just left. So.
All right. So tonight we'll touch briefly on the CBO grant program's background, and then we'll provide you with the fiscal year 23 grant funding cycle wrap-up, and then we'll conclude with our fiscal year 2024 CBO funding recommendations. So tonight we're asking the City Council to review and approve the community-based organization funding recommendations for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $166,667. So as you may recall, in November of 2021, the City Council allocated $500,000 in the American Rescue Plan Act. COVID-19 pandemic discretionary funds to support this new nonprofit grant program. And in February 2022, the City Council approved an annual allocation of the targeted $166,666 to be disseminated over a course of 3 fiscal years to support the unique and temporary CBO grant program per the ARPA funding guidelines. So it was decided that the minimum funding award amount was $2,500 and a maximum not to exceed funding amount award of $25,000 per organization per funding cycle. So I'd like to share with you all the fiscal year 23 grant funding cycle at a glance. During fiscal year 23, staff conducted outreach in March 2022 via email to distribution lists. We provided social media posts, and we shared and advertised the CBO grant program on our city's website. And in fiscal year 23, 23 CBO applications were submitted and 18 organizations were awarded. And a total amount of $191,950 was
Sorry, Mayor, it looks like the microphones are getting tired tonight, so we're going to just do a quick swap there.
Sorry about that. So a total of $191,950 was allocated in fiscal year 23. So all in all, during our inaugural year, the CBO program was a success. Tonight, we have your fiscal year 2024 CBO funding recommendations for your consideration. So we went through the same outreach process like that of fiscal year 23 and conducted our research in spring of 23 via email to distribution lists. Again, we shared social media posts, and we again advertised on our city's website. 30 CBO applications were submitted, and 27 organizations are being recommended tonight for funding. Out of the 27, 17 are reoccurring, so that means that they received funds in fiscal year 23. And 13 of the 27 are new CBO submittals. Services offered vary widely in purpose and scope. So we had a total amount of $674,125 requested during this fiscal year, and we have $166,667 available to disseminate per our approved allocation schedule. We followed the same evaluation criteria, which includes looking at the number of Corona residents or students served. And we also looked at the program's alignment with our city's strategic plan. And we also looked at the program's fit in the current need and in the current needs of our community. We also followed the same format with our application disqualifiers like that of last year. This year, 3 applicants were not recommended for funding, with the reasons being either their requests were beyond the scope of ARPA guidelines, the requests did not align with the city's strategic plan or current needs, or requests did not serve the broader Corona student and or resident population. So some of the fiscal year 2024 programs being considered for funding tonight, you'll see it ranges between our arts and music, so scholarships and programming for arts awareness, to critical social services, support for our cancer patients or emergency aid for utility bills, to food distribution programming. And you'll also see renovations and restoration requests for our community spaces. So this year we received 10 new qualifying applicants, and it's our goal to ensure that a wider reach of both Corona residents and students benefit from our available CBO grant funds, which is why staff is recommending that these qualifying programs receive 50% of their funding request, utilizing the same methodology from last year. So with the 50% methodology applied, the funding request will have a total of what you see on the screen there, $106,867. And here it shows, the chart shows that we received 17 reoccurring applicants who have already received funding last year during fiscal year 23. The organizations you see before you are being recommended to receive the remaining $59,800, which will fund approximately 16% of their requested amount for fiscal year 24. By using this methodology, it will allow for all qualifying applicants, new and reoccurring, an equitable chance to receive the CBO grant funding allocated for this year. And again, we ask that our City Council review and approve the CBO grant funding grant program funding recommendations for fiscal year 24 in the amount of $166,667. And this concludes my presentation. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor, before you speak, can you go back to page 13?
Sure.
Thanks. It's all you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Casillas, did you have any questions?
Just a couple of comments. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I'm really happy to hear that we are making a recommendation to honor and provide some sort of funding for everyone that qualifies, for all the nonprofits that qualify. I think it's important to just, I'm sure most people recognize this, but this is a grant program that's temporary. It's only through ARPA funding. This is not a regular funding source for the city of Corona. And this is also different from our CDBG block grants. So not to be confused one for the other. And this is an annual thing. So I do have one question, which is on page 12. We highlight the, is it 12? Where is it that we have the, oh, sorry, I saw roof repairs and I thought Women's Improvement Club and I thought we already did that. So this is a different roof. Got it.
It's the old Methodist church.
It's a different church, different roof. We like
We
repairing
have a
roofs.
thing for
We have a
roofs.
thing for roofs. Okay, well, anyway, other than that, I really appreciate it. I'm happy to hear that we can support all nonprofits in some way and that we're making good use of these ARPA funds. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Ms. Van, thank you for putting this together. I wish the city could give away this money every year. I really do, but all of these groups are just valuable groups to Corona. So just very happy. Thank you.
Ms. Van, remind me, I think I asked this question last time, but when folks are looking for, or they have put in for grants for specific things, if those specific things don't come to fruition, do they not get the money? Like, for an example, there's a request here for someone that's looking for a facility to do some sort of sports-specific training. And there is a recommendation to help fund their program, but if what they're asking for doesn't come to fruition, do they still get the money?
So we would be able to work with them and try and see if there are other qualifying factors. So we would work with this organization and see if there's other ways where they can utilize the grant funds.
I don't think that was a very clear answer. So yes or no, if they're asking for something specific, money for something very specific, and they don't get that specific thing done, do we fund them?
So, Mayor, it is a reimbursement grant, so the agencies that are recommended for funding do have to submit receipts verifying that they have completed the tasks that they were awarded funding for. So that has been our practice with the first fiscal year that we implemented this in fiscal year 23, is they had to show verification that they completed the task. We haven't come across a situation yet where we've had an agency not be able to complete the task and propose an alternative task. So our practice has always been to be able to just award the funds after proof of completion.
Okay. Because there's a request in here for a softball program, and I'm concerned because these are travel teams that are very well funded by parents, and what they're asking for is money for them to rent a facility to do their training at. And so I'm concerned that, is this the best use of money for our community?
Mayor, if I can interject, that's exactly why we bring this here for the council in its wisdom to give us direction on which items it wishes to fund. And if the council does not wish to fund that item, it is entirely within your prerogative to remove it. So these are simply a list of recommended items based on the requests that we've received. We would welcome any direction that you have.
Is that on page 12? Can you go to page 12, please?
It's not in reoccurring, it's in the new.
Can you go back to 13?
Firecrackers, Maris.
It was firecrackers?
Yeah, so in the staff report, there's a separate attachment that tells you about the program, which is what I'm reading, so that I'm not just looking at the dollar amount. And so it says the funds will go towards looking for a facility to lease within the city of Corona to provide strength, conditioning, athletic training, and academic assistance to student athletes. So what if they don't find a facility, I guess is the question.
So to answer your question as directly as we can, if they don't find a facility, then we have nothing to reimburse. Those dollars would come back and we'd reallocate them.
Okay. So in this particular case, we would see a receipt for first month's rent or something along those lines.
Correct. We only reimburse. We don't advance the money.
Right. So, okay. Well, then I guess that answers my question. That I'm having a hard time with that. I don't want to say no to that particular one, but I want to make sure that this isn't, and there are several of these that are very well funded softball organizations that the parents are paying, lots of money, and these are for-profit entities. And so I'm I'm just concerned.
I don't think any of the items here or any of the organizations here should not be for-profit entities.
they're all
We confirm that,
nonprofit.
right?
They're all nonprofit.
Okay.
I mean, their founders can get a salary, but it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
But again, this isn't a rubber stamp, so if council feels like you want to reallocate or change funding that goes to any organization, that's totally within your prerogative to do that.
But staff has reviewed the application. They're all qualifying.
Correct.
So,
Well, you know what? Since it's a reimbursement, I'm fine with it. If they don't provide receipts, say something that has to do with renting their facility, then there's no reimbursement.
Correct.
So that clarification makes me feel better about it.
Okay, thank you.
Did we already go to public comment?
Oh, yeah, we got to do that. Ms. Edwards, is there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, we do not have any speaker cards.
Okay. Then I will
Move to approve?
move to approve. I'll second. I also will make a motion that we leave Wes and Jim out there for as long as we can. All right, I'll go get them. Did Jim go home or did he stay?
I said grab them.
Out in the parking lot, huh?
All right. Moving on to item number 20, legislative matter. Ordinance amending section 6.20.040 of chapter 6.20 of Title 6 of the Corona Municipal Code relating to the keeping of chickens in a single-family residential zone. Does any council member want a staff report on this item? Nope. Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, we do not have any speaker cards.
Do I have any questions or comments from my colleague?
I'll make a motion.
And you got to read it.
Oh. Do I? Oh.
I was gonna do that just because it was my motion, but thank you.
Bastards. Just the blue, right, Dean? Just read the blue?
Yep.
Okay. Introduced by title only and waive full reading of ordinance number 3377, first reading of an ordinance amending section 6.20.040 of chapter 6.20 of Title 6, the CMC. The amendments modify the criteria and standards such as minimum lot size, maximum number, contained area, and distance requirements.
I will second that motion. And that motion passes. Wes doesn't like the chickens. All right, moving on to boards and commissions, reports from city council commissioners and staff for the
Why don't you like the chickens?
receive and file the library board of trustees report update for July 25th, 2023. Planning and Housing Commission, there are none. Parks and Rec Commission, there are none. Regional meetings, an update from Vice Mayor Tom Richins on the Riverside County Habitat Conservation Agency, RCHCA, meeting of August 10th, 2023. Everybody prepare yourself for what he is about to say. No, just, you never know.
Well, it was quite a boring meeting, actually. All right. Thank you, Mayor. We met this month at the City of Paris City Hall. It was a fine building, historic building. Loved it. And the good environmentalists of the RCHCA gave a good update. They, as you might suspect, they're pretty involved with the kangaroo rat, and they're going to trap them. So they've identified 76 locations, and they're hoping to catch 34 of these rats. So, well, they got to do some DNA sampling, and well, it's the Lord's work, so you got to do this. So that's the rats, and then Maricopa County and the San Diego Wildlife Zoo have recognized the good environmentalists of the RCHCA and want to learn more about the kangaroo rats. So they feel they are 20 years behind the technology, and our good environmentalists are going to help them out. It is nice. The Lord is happy. So last but not least, the stinkweed is a problem at the RCHCA. It's an invasive species to the Southern California region, and the good environmentalists are very worried about it. So we had a 20-minute conversation on the stinkweed, and the sweet-spirited council member of Menifee, she let it be known that she's leading the efforts in that city to eradicate stinkweed, and God bless her. So she's a sweet spirit, and she's doing good. So with that, I think that wraps it up.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I was
Good.
curious, could you clarify, did you say that the zoo people from Maricopa County are 20 years behind on their kangaroo rat technology?
That's what they said. Clearly, we're a crack staff of environmentalists, and Wes, you probably know these people, right?
Of course, Wes knows them.
So we're sending guys down in there, and we're going to educate, and they. I don't know if I can let this out. This is kind of on the down low, but we have flying drones out up above, and they look for rats and stinkweed and the burrowing owls, and it's quite. We're not monkeying around out there.
Technologically advanced.
Yeah.
Oh.
Any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you very much for the riveting report on the. Thank you. Not to be outdone, Mr. Durliff, do you have any comments?
No.
Mr. Ellis, do you have any comments?
No, sir, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to City Council Member Report. This is an advance travel request for Councilmember Wes Speake to attend the 2023 League of California Cities Conference and Expo in beautiful downtown Sacramento in September, where the weather should be a balmy 93 degrees at 87% humidity. Does any council member want a staff report on this item? Ms. Edwards, are there any speaker cards from the public?
Mayor, we do not have any speaker cards.
A motion has been made.
I'll second.
Motion has been seconded. Please vote. Item passes 5-0. Councilmember Speake, did you have any colleagues or any comments?
No, sir.
Oh, wow. Councilmember Steiner.
Yes, sir, just a few. I wanted to thank this Corona-Norco Settlement House for hosting a shopping spree day for underserved children. They actually, we had a bunch of volunteer citizens in our community who showed up, and each child was given a $125 gift card, and there was, I think, 110 children. So a lot of kids were able to just kind of have fun shopping at Kohl's on someone else's dime. So thanks, Settlement House. I wanted to thank our community services team. We, along with our citizens who planted 60 trees last Saturday near Green River, specifically on Canyon Crest and Oak Ridge Drive. I went to Sacramento bright and early this morning. That may be a reason why I'm completely tired and disinterested right now. But so it was a long, long day, but we I went as part of a delegation with the Santa Ana River Local Advisory Group, and our goal today was to meet with as many legislators as we could to try to secure funding for the Santa Ana River Trail. We talked a lot about trails tonight, and we are trying to not only get money for the entire Santa Ana River Trail, which is 110 miles, but we're trying to get the pinch point connected at Green River and get that trail connected through Corona. So that is something that we're working on. We met with about 10 different legislators and staff members today, so that was cool. You guys had allocated about $1,300 for me. I only spent about $500, so you're welcome. And finally, we've got some, Chief Young, we got some unusual kind of cool deployments going on right now. I just thought maybe you could touch on them real quick.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Councilmember Steiner. Just an observation, and I wanted to share. That's really good. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. We have 3 simultaneous deployments happening right now with Corona Fire personnel. The first and most significant one is we're a participating member in California Task Force 6, Urban Search and Rescue Team, one of only 28 female USAR teams in the country, and they've been deployed to do recovery and search functions in Lahaina. So they left this morning as part of a larger team of 60 from Riverside County fire agencies. Secondarily, we have resources deployed right now in Oregon for significant fires that are occurring in Central Oregon. And then lastly, we have 5 members of our peer support and mental health team who are trained peer supporters to deal with the mid-air collision that occurred about 10 days ago with CAL FIRE Air Resources. So it's just a great example of our department. And while this is happening, we remain fully staffed to protect the citizens of our own city. So thanks for asking. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the great work of you and our team. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I did have one thing. I just wanted to, it was a quick thank you to staff. I had a resident reach out I think it was this morning or maybe it was yesterday. Rick Munder had noticed that our sweeping folks didn't do a really fantastic job on his house. He sent a note, and he literally emailed me back an hour later and said that the sweeper truck had went in front of his house 4 times just to make sure that they got it done. So I wanted to say thank you to staff, and thank you to the resident for reaching out, but thank you to staff for mobilizing and getting that done right away. So again, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Casillas?
Yes, I realized that my email to Ms. Edwards was in my draft box, and I didn't say that I had a WRCOG meeting. So I'm just real quick, just going to share out. It's not as exciting as the Stevens kangaroo rat, but we did have a couple of things of note at our last meeting on August the 7th. The first is that during our meeting, we accepted a standardized criteria to evaluate upcoming WRCOG programs and initiatives. This is part of the strategic plan and kind of the new executive director on board. We want to have a more critical eye towards evaluating any new ventures that WRCOG gets into. This tool allows for a standardized evaluation of new programs, but commissioners will still have to look critically at the programs and the staff's evaluation to make a full and complete evaluation and vote accordingly. So it's just a step in the right direction. And then we had a presentation on the Love Your Neighborhood program, and I've already shared with Mr. Ellis how this program, in my opinion, is WRCOG's attempt to do what we're doing with Corona Beautiful, but it's not as cool. But, because our program really is incredible. But if we can partner with WRCOG, WRCOG is giving resources to partnering agencies. And so if there's a way there that we can create some synergy and get some resources for our own volunteer and cleanup events, then that's a good thing. And lastly, WRCOG was awarded $421,000 in a grant to develop a energy resiliency plan 2.0. Don't ask me the details on that one quite yet, but getting to work on it. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. All of us last week got to go to the State of the City, and I'm going to screw this up, but I sat in the State of the City with quite a few citizens and residents there, and I talked to the city manager, and they're going to release the video that they showed at the State of the City. They're going to release it next week. And I hope everybody takes the time to watch this video. You will walk away so very impressed with how well the city is functioning. And you will be so very impressed with the staff of the city and the things that are happening in the city. And I'll leave it to Tony to speak a little bit more on it. But Jacob, it was I think every city is jealous of our city. So I'll leave it to you, Tony.
Well, I think I was just going to announce that that the State of the City video was going to be released either later this week or the beginning of next week, and it's definitely worth everybody watching. It came out really well. Very proud of our digital team for putting it together and the storytelling that they're weaving and kind of showing what the city is doing. So I think that they did a great job. I was very happy with it, and I think that you guys will be as well. I do want to give a shout out to our community services department. We had a fantastic summer concert series. I believe that there were record crowds. We incorporated a little bit more of a street fair vibe, if you will, this year, with the food trucks and the vendors set up out on 6th Street. I would like to remind everybody that I told you so, that we should close down the entire 6th Street, which is what we did. But I thought it was great. The bands were great. The crowds were great. Like I said, it was record crowds. I think that next year you guys have got some big shoes to fill as far as getting some great acts in there. And I think that's the genesis of it. We had some really great bands this year. And people came out to see him, and they somehow even have their own traveling groupies with them. So, which is a lot of fun to see people show up in leisure suits in 95-degree weather to see. Also, last Thursday, we actually had a visit from the HUD Deputy Assistant Secretary Monterosa. She came from Washington, D.C. with part of her staff in the local L.A. HUD offices, and they wanted to tour our homeless solution assets, if you will. They have heard wonderful things about what Corona is doing for addressing the homeless issue. So myself, Councilmember Steiner, Chief Newman, the city manager, and a lot of staff, including Ms. Lara, who disappeared, were there at our permanent supportive housing on 5th Street, and then also our Harrison Hope Center, talking about the comprehensive plan that we have as far as how robust it is, working from taking somebody off of the street and getting them into, working them all the way through the system, getting them the services that they need to get into permanent supportive housing. And so it was great to have her there, acknowledging the hard work that the city of Corona and the staff has done to get us to that point. So obviously HUD is a major funding source for a lot of the things that we do. And they were very happy to see that, and this is one of the things that I've learned, and we've talked about it in a lot of other arenas, but you have to have something going on in order to be able to apply for that money. And that's the real beauty of our plan, is that we not only do we have it to be articulated, but we can show how it's going to work. We could show all of the steps. We can show how complete it is, and that's what allows us to get a lot of that free money. And I know for our homeless plan, we've gotten millions of dollars in just grants and federal aid. So, and it's because we've got something that we can offer. So, very happy to have her out, seeing the success that we have. And lastly, after the last meeting we had last week, everything was pretty quiet around my house until about 3:30 in the morning, and then Corona PD was pounding on my front door, which was really fun. My neighbor had a fire start at the side of their house, which was between their house and my house, and they ended up calling the fire department, which activated the PD as well. And so I can tell you there's no funner thing than having Corona PD knocking on your door very loudly at 3:30 in the morning. Surprisingly, this doesn't happen right away. And so I'm not sure what I looked like at 3:30 in the morning, but it wasn't very pretty. So thank you, Chief Newman. If you could please pass along my, my condolences to your officer for having to deal with this mug at 3:30 in the morning. And obviously, Chief Young, thank you very much. Once the fire department showed up, they were busy at work, getting their hoses connected and whatnot, and the fire did not last very long. Unfortunately for them, and kudos to them, once my son was awake, he had lots of questions. And so your firefighters were great at answering all of his questions, which is good because I was out of time to answer questions at 3:30 in the morning. So thank you very much to Corona PD, Corona Fire Department. The damage was minimal. Nobody was hurt. There were a couple shades, umbrellas that made the ultimate sacrifice. But other than that, it was pretty benign. So thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn to the next council meeting of September 6, 2023. Thank you very much.